Yes. It is the Cast Worthy Podcast. Back at you. I am Big Steve, aka Last of a Dying Breed. Joined this evening by EJ the Savage and the VP of Research, Three's Company. We are back at it, gentlemen. How goes it?
What's good, man? Glad to be back.
You all is well. I'm here to tell. Snitching on you bitches.
Listening. Um, it is January 9th, Thursday, right? Thursday, January 9th.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we are post possible World War III coming at you here. Again, it is Castworthy Podcast. Before we get started, you know where to find us. If you haven't listened before, you can find us on all your podcast outlets, whether it be Spotify, whether it be Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, YouTube, um, Google Play Music, just about anywhere. iHeartRadio. So, follow us, listen to us, share our content, comment on it, leave your feedback, leave your comments. We'll get back at you. We are also available on all social media platforms: Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. If you just search for Castworthy, CASTWORTHY, you will find us. Um, so yeah, let's get right into it. VP, welcome back. It's good to see you. We haven't seen you since pre New Year, actually probably before Christmas. How was the holiday and the New Year for you?
Um, Holiday was good, man. Got to chill with the fam, ate some food. You know, New Year itself was good, but getting back in that saddle at work, man, it's been tough. It's tough coming back from vacation, man. So I'm still trying to get back on that horse.
Right, absolutely. I'm still catching up. I went back to work on the first, and so body is finally catching back up with me. But yeah, man. Uh so where we at, man? You are our political CNN connoisseur. We damn near ended up on World War III. Motherfuckers was scrambling, doomsday preparers and shit out here buying up all the fucking OJ and canned goods. Um, what are we looking like, man? Post apocalyptic. We dodged a bullet or what? What's going on?
Man, it's really tough to say with the situation in Iran, and the reason why I say that is that things are happening. We're still in the middle of it. And back in um the mid 2000s, back in the mid 2000s when we invaded Iraq, eventually we later captured Saddam Hussein and he was executed. A lot of people thought that was a good idea. Saddam was a bad guy. He was a murderous dictator, killed tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of his own people. And a lot of people cheered that Saddam was gone. However, you could trace a lot of the issues that we have in the Middle East to Saddam Hussein being taken out in the mid 2000s. Because as brutal of a dictator as he was, as much of a bad guy as he was, he helped keep the balance in the Middle East, right?
Kept shit in order. He was the big boss, the
Ex-
godfather.
exactly. And it's kind of like how EJ has talked about in the past when we talk about like black on black crime in some of these big cities in like a Chicago and Baltimore, etc. Where he talks about how the government has come in and they rolled up a lot of those OGs who used to kind of keep the streets in order.
Right.
And so it's kind of like that in the Middle East, just on a much larger scale. And so somebody like Qasem Soleimani, who was the guy who Trump had killed last week, was somebody in that vein, right? This guy was a hardliner in Iraq. He wanted war with us, don't get me wrong, but There were other people in there holding him back, you know. But this guy was going throughout the Middle East using some of the Iranian militias to combat ISIS. And now that he's gone, those militias want smoke with us. The ISIS motherfuckers already wanted smoke with us. So it's not like that's changing. They probably wanted even more so since we killed this guy and he's Muslim. So I think that while everything may be on ice for right now, it seems like cooler heads are starting to prevail, etc. We just don't know, because a country like Iran, for them, it's chess, it's not checkers. They play the long game, you know. And while they can't do anything to us militarily, if you go military to military, like they don't want it, you know what I mean? But they got other things that they can do. You know, Iran is very big when it comes to cyber attacks, so they could hit us there in cyberspace. Um, Iran has militias throughout the Middle East. So, and then that's one thing that they do, that this guy Soleimani was in charge of, was a lot of the proxy militias. Iran likes to stay one step removed to keep that deniability. But when everything was jumping off, they was already talking about attacks in Israel, attacks in the United Arab Emirates, attacks in Lebanon, so on and so on throughout the Middle East. And this is stuff that they can do to flex their muscles. So right now things seem to be chill, but I don't think that we're necessarily out of the woods yet.
Well, I know that they just deployed. Well, they're planning to deploy more soldiers. As a friend of mine, his daughter is at Fort Bragg, I believe, at Fort Bragg,
Mm-hmm,
in the Army, and they just received a call yesterday that they're going to Iraq,
mm-hmm.
because of all of this. So strategically, I don't know what our commander is gearing up for, but it's definitely a powder keg in a lot of ways. And like you said, man, we knew this when we got rid of Saddam, that the balance of the Middle East would be shaken up. And like you said, we haven't really recovered. And I mean, thinking back to the 80s, man, just our involvement, with the Taliban, and just we, we are constantly sticking our nose in places that they do not belong. And it's just, just so crazy to me on how our president can talk about our American cities being in such bad shape, which many ways they are. But all of this money that we spend on military, and foreign military actions, it's just crazy. And for this to happen now, while the heat is on him, he has to throw his base a bone. It's just disgusting, man. It's pretty nasty. I'm glad thus far there are no known casualties on our side. No reported casualties, rather. And I'm hoping that it stays that way, man, because I for one do not want to see another pointless 10-year stupid war at the hands of foolishness.
Yeah. So one thing we tend to talk about is familiarity with what's going on in society, with politics, etc. Beyond the avid political guru like VP, like yourself, like E, right? We talk about the novice individuals, right? And so one might say, if you've been keeping your eye on social media and such, ever since the Iran stuff started, the impeachment stuff is now gone from a social media standpoint, right? Not saying that it's not being talked about on the news channels. You would know better than we do, as VP, because you're more in tune with that. But looking at, if you're targeting individuals who are not following what you would call fake news, I think what he did fucking got everyone's mind off of the impeachment, for that, from that standpoint, right? From that demographic, the people like yourself, people like again EJ, etc. even myself, I'm a novice, but I'm not gonna allow something like that to take my mind off of the other fucking 3 years of shit that he's pulled while in fucking office. Do you think that this was all a ploy to try and get people's minds off of it and take a play on the novice individuals?
We lose the VP and sound?
Yeah.
I think we lost the VP and sound. Do I think it's a play on the novice individual? Um, I think what the right has accomplished and have mastered extremely well is the art of distraction. As you said 1,000 times, we are a fickle society. We are controlled heavily by, like VP talks about, only a few media stations, few media outlets.
Mm.
He has mastered the wave, and let's be real. I mean, he's an entertainer. He's a business guy, successful or not, whatever you want to call it. He knows how to work the airwaves, and so he's overloaded the mainstream media to where this takes precedence over the impeachment. It has to, because of the implications. It has to, because of just everything that happened. So I don't even know that it's a tactic for the novice. It's just a tactic overall. Of course it will. I don't even think, let me say this, I don't even know that the novice or the non everyday follower of news, really even delves into the impeachment, let alone this. This is actually a distraction for the experts, because the people like VP and many others that pay attention, that watch news and stay up on politics every day, they have absolutely no choice but to look into this. Look at VP's profile, ex-Marine, Marine forever, but not an active Marine, guy who's staunchly passionate about politics. He has no choice to to get into this as a Marine. He's gonna look at this first.
Right.
Even though the impeachment will still be on the horizon, the Senate hasn't made any moves. Now let's look at that. Um, Even in Congress, you have the House and I mean, you have both houses, the House and the Senate, saying different things. You have Democrats saying he's made these moves without our consent. So now this even shifts their focus to some degree off of the impeachment. So it's just, man, I mean, it's calculated. It's Republican esque. It's it's par for the course, in the sense that we're again trying to establish some footholds in the Middle East, which the right never argues against, no matter what the cost.
Mm.
So I mean, he's been holding this in his back pocket, man, and I mean, he played his trump card very well. No
Yeah.
pun intended.
Yeah, I totally agree, man. There's actually a video of Donald Trump that he put out on his Instagram back in like 2011, 2012, where he talks about how in order to get reelected, Barack Obama is going to start a war with Iran. And he's like, as sure as I'm sitting here, it's going to happen. Trust me, yada, yada, yada. And with most things, Trump says it's projection, right? He's projecting onto other people what he himself thinks, believes, or would do. And when you look at this story of them killing Qasem Soleimani,
Mm.
something was happening with this guy, according to our intelligence folks. And they went to Trump and they presented him with several options. Now, because Donald Trump is like a 3-year-old child, right? They presented him with the options in a way where they basically showed him the stuff that the experts essentially wanted him to do. And then they showed him this very extreme option of killing the guy, thinking that it would lead him to the choice that the experts wanted, right? So that way you get that false sense of you're making a decision, but you're really doing what I wanted you to do anyway, right?
Right.
But Trump says, yeah, let's take him out. And according to news reports, after Trump gives this order to take the guy out, because the Defense Department, the folks at the Defense Department who were presenting him with these options didn't even think that this was going to happen. We didn't even know where this guy was at the time. So from the time that Trump gives the order, we actually have to go and try to find this dude to kill him. You see what I'm saying? So that kind of just shows you that this is not something that we wanted to do, but Trump figures it's a way to distract. It's a way to change the subject. Get impeachment off the front burner for right now. And for the most part, it's essentially done that, right? The problem is that as things are looking right now, they seem to be cooling down. And things are happening in the impeachment thing, almost daily. So while Iran is the first story that's coming on the news, they talk about that, and then the next thing they talk about is impeachment or the election. So
Right.
impeachment is not necessarily going away. It's kind of like they have that movie on Netflix, The Irishman, right?
Yeah.
And the guy who's like that prosecutor in the movie, I saw the real life guy on the news show when the show was first premiering on Netflix. And the host asks him, he says, you were dealing with like these tough guys, these mobsters or whatever, you were never scared they were going to try to take you out or kill you or something like that? And he was like, I mean, it's something that was in the back of my mind. He was like, but I figured these folks are rational enough to know if they kill me as a prosecutor, that's not going to stop the case. They're just going to send a new guy,
Right.
you know? So, and it's kind of that same thing with impeachment, Yeah, Trump got it out of the headlines for a couple of days, a week or so, but it's not going anywhere. It's still there. You know what I mean? And so, you know, but he doesn't think in that way. He doesn't, like, a lot of people try to claim Trump thinks, it's three-dimensional chess. You know what I mean? Trump is doing a game of bowling with a baseball bat or some shit, like the guy is not all there. And the last thing I'll say on this, like, watching him this week finally have an actual crisis as president. I saw this thing on Twitter that I posted in our chat that said, watching the Trump presidency is like being strapped to a chair and watching a toddler with a loaded handgun. And then I posted that, right?
Ooh.
And somebody replied to me on Twitter, and they was like, what's even worse is the psychos who tied you to the armchair is laughing at you and telling the toddler how cute he is. And that's
Right.
basically the Trump presidency right there.
Ooh.
Yeah. You know, I,
Wow.
and like I said, again, I'll never claim to be any type of professional or anything like that when it comes to this, but I mean, the average American can watch, when he addressed us, and you can see like he's not built for it. Like he's not built for that type of pressure. He was fucking sniffling and fucking babbling and fucking stumbling over his words, like you don't expect that. I mean, it's like he went to bed that night. It's like before he went to bed, he tweeted that he was gonna fucking address the nation, and then he went to bed and was like, fuck it, I'm gonna wake up tomorrow and I'm gonna wing it. You know what I'm saying? Like no prep for, like, if you go to an interview without prepping type shit. Like that's what it was like, bro. And you just can't have somebody like that, which makes, that's again partially what made me think, it's all bullshit. All he did was try to bully his way out of the fucking negative media, because he's like, fuck it, I could pop off at these niggas, and they really, like, everybody knows, like, they really don't want smoke with us. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
But what I was trying to explain to somebody at work, because they were saying, oh well, they don't want it. We'll wipe them off the map, yada yada yada. We'll beat their ass, yada yada yada. And I'm like, that may be so, but what about the people that are gonna die in the midst of it, right? If we end up losing 20 soldiers, 30 soldiers, 200 soldiers, however many over whatever the time frame is, while we're at war with these people, that's too much. You know what I'm saying? Like that, we're putting other people's children, fathers, husbands, wives at fucking risk, because this fucking big baby in office decides, you know what? Let me go ahead and try and make an example of somebody and try to get myself out of the media. I mean, again, I guess also, again, what people don't understand, and you kind of put this into perspective for me is it's been ongoing. Like the beef that we've had with Iran, it's not new, right? They made it seem like it's new, and all the posts that you see, all the posts are showing that come from the Republicans and the supporters are showing just recency bias. It's showing, oh well, they attacked the embassy and etc etc etc. They're not going back and just saying, listen, we've been having beef since the 80s and 90s, and keeping it cordial for the sake of people's lives. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm. And not just that, when I used to have those kind of conversations with people, especially back when I was in college, when folks would say, we would do this and we would do that, my initial response is always, who the fuck is we? You know what I'm saying? Because you ain't fighting, right?
Right.
And it's always the motherfuckers who got this false patriotism and we'll do this and we'll do that, and our military this, not like, it ain't you fighting. Your kids ain't going to fighting. It's probably not even somebody in your family's going to fight, right?
Right.
And folks are so easy, so readily uh uh willing to send the military over to do this or to that. And then when it comes time to, put some tax dollars out there to make sure there's enough doctors at the VA, to make sure this motherfucker who lost his arm or who has PTSD, who can't fucking sleep, who's suicidal or whatever, when this motherfucker's trying to get some benefits, the money ain't there because the same guy who was willing to ship his ass off to fight in Iran don't want to fork over any more cash and taxes. You know what I'm saying? So that kind of shit just really irks the fuck out of me when I hear people say shit like, we'll do this. Who the fuck is we? Like, you don't wear the uniform. You know what I'm saying? Like, you just talking noise. Like, you talking like sports fans do. We won the championship. Like, you don't play. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like, that shit really bugs me, man.
It bothers me. It bothers me so much so. I feel the same way because most of the soldiers that we see going over, most of the people statistically going over, are people that are like us from places that we are from, and it's like you make it through the hood to fucking go over there and fight a pointless war that isn't won, you know, one to one. It's not one soldier to soldier. It's not one, this way. It's won by the threat of bombing and missiles and nuclear threat, and people don't see the implications of this type thing. This isn't the days of the Roman Empire. This isn't the days of the Huns where you could have open warfare and conquer someone, and the worst can happen. You're gonna have 100 babies commingling. No, man, it's people have their finger on the trigger. The world is watching what America is going to do. Everything that we do has implications towards other nations and how they see us when you travel abroad, when not to mention the cells that are here, that may be here, and the threat that is. And then I just go back, man, as somewhat of a historian, vaguely in my own mind, when I can remember. The founding fathers got to be rolling in their graves. If they didn't, if they were around today and not corrupted by money, let's say, George Washington always said it best, man. He said, the best foreign policy is to leave motherfuckers alone. You know what I mean? We and I'm paraphrasing. He didn't say that, but um, it's like you're talking about conquering these lands. It's almost like it's just ridiculous. Like when even every time we have to talk about what we need to do in Israel, what we need to do for this nation, what we need to do for that nation, and then on the same token, you shit on your own country that's dying from inside. It
Mm.
just makes absolutely no sense, and it's indicative to how this nation really feels about its people, about the people of color, about the people in need. Because if you really gave a shit about what was going on for America, you would start to do shit for America in America. And it's just like, leave them the fuck alone, man. Like, I mean, Iran isn't bothering us, it's just nothing is gonna come out of this. And I hope that we don't have any loss of life throughout this whole engagement. I hope cooler heads, I'm not even gonna say cooler heads prevail. I just hope that shit gets settled the right way. And like you, VP, it angers me when I hear these people talking patriotism and they don't know the slightest bit of what it actually means going back to the establishment of this nation. And like you said, they don't go out and fight, they don't do anything, and it's just it's sickening, man, because the trauma and the issues that people face when they come back here is absolutely real. And having to watch, listen to taps being played and see the flags being folded, it's just bullshit, man. And there's no reason why we fucking need to be out there, and it's sad.
Yeah, and I agree with what you're saying, EJ. And to Steve's point, where he says, Trump tweeted out he's going to address the nation, and then it seems like he just went out there and said fuck it and just started winging it. And you watch this guy, and I tell people this all the time. I think that Trump literally thought being president was simply the shit you see on TV. You watch the news and you see the president met with the Golden State Warriors and he cracked a couple jokes about Steph, and then he met with the teacher of the year, or maybe this ambassador came by, he got some award with the Boy Scouts or some shit like that, and then he gets in office and realize, nah, dog, you have to actually like run the country. You know what I'm saying? And the reason why he sounds and looks unprepared is because he is unprepared, right? Somebody in the White House writes a speech, they load the words into a teleprompter, and when Trump is reading them off the teleprompter, it's literally the first time he's seen the words. And that's why you see him give a speech and he's fumbling over the words. You'll hear him say stuff like, nobody knew that. No, you didn't know that. You know what I'm saying? And so he is literally super unprepared because he just doesn't give a fuck, man. He just doesn't give a fuck. And what really bothers me, like, I think ever since you told me, I don't know if you said it while we were on air or just in our private chat or whatever, where somebody reached out to you and said that they felt like we should be more balanced on the podcast and kind of present the Trump side of things or whatever. That shit's always bothered me because I be thinking, like, what's his side, right? You literally have a guy who during hurricane season asked his advisors, why don't we shoot nuclear weapons into the hurricanes to break them up? This is the fucking president. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not no fucking meteorologist or nuclear physicist or whatever the fuck. But even I know that that's fucking insane. That's insanely stupid. You know what I'm saying? But this person is like, hey man, you guys should be presenting that side. Like, right. Come on, dog. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, so all right, I agree. So two more quick questions, and we can move on, so we're not beating this horse. Question one, for both of you guys is: is it safe to say now, right, that from a country standpoint, U.S. versus Iran, number one, two-part question again, that we're cool on that type of war, the missiles, the bombs, and etc., the combat war, but like you said earlier, we're still worried about the militias, etc. And then part two of that question becomes, you said Iran is big into cyber attacks and stuff, right? What are the chances or the odds that they were just like, let's just play this big dummy and tell them that we're good, we don't want to escalate, and they're fucking thinking something on the back end, like, all right, once we get fucking into the network in the United States and we shut shit down, then we fucking attack.
I think it's very likely, and again, this is a country that's playing the long game, and not only just with using their militias and their proxies to attack us, the cyber warfare. Remember, Iran's biggest weapon is that it's oil, right? Now, Iran only produces about 4% of the world's oil. However, All of the oil that comes out of the Middle East is from landlocked countries. It has to travel through the Strait of Hormuz, which is a water channel that basically runs in between like Iran and some of these other Middle Eastern countries. But the Strait of Hormuz, the majority of it passes along the borders of Iran, and it's about 12 miles wide or something like that. So it's not like it's some small, channel or whatever.
Mhm.
But Iran can go out there and cause major fucking havoc with these oil tankers going through the Strait of Hormuz, and all that's going to do is have ripple effects throughout the global economy, because it'll make oil prices go up, which makes gas prices go up, which makes food prices go up, which makes everything go up. You know what I'm saying? So it's not like, even though Iran can't match us militarily, it's not like they don't have options. You know what I'm saying? And even if you think, oh, these people are crazy, they're fanatics, et cetera, et cetera, we're dealing with people who have real experience, right? We're dealing with people who plan, who plot, and they're looking at things like playing chess. Whereas the guy who is in charge of our country is like a fucking child. You know what I'm saying? So, who knows what the fuck happens, man?
To answer, and I agree 100% with that. To answer your first question, I don't think any warfare. Again, I don't think any nation at this point. When does the world become civilized? At what point do we really realize we cannot afford to have any conflict of this magnitude? I don't care whether it's missiles. I don't care what it is. This is it's just not civilized. And when we're the world's leader of the free world, and we're supposed to be setting an example, this does not bode well in the world. And there are other implications that maybe the rich are willing to deal with, but for the rest of us out here that depend on the economy, that depend on other things, not saying the rich don't, but the average Joe is not prepared to deal with the implications of any kind of conflict because we got other shit to deal with. It just doesn't make any sense, man. So I don't think any type of warfare, I don't think any type of conflict is good for any nation at this point in time overall, at all. Um, and going forward with the cybersecurity and everything, I mean, if they're gonna do something to attack Sally Mae, do us all a favor. You know what I mean? Sally Mae, Nelnet, whatever it is, do us all a favor, make something shake for us. But otherwise, man, I just it's and then just going back to what VP said about the people that are actually tying us up. That I think that's the most disgusting thing of it all. These are rational, supposedly rational and educated people that are sitting by in this guy's corner, voted for him, supporting him, but basically leading us down the road to failure. And I just don't understand how people can continue to double down on such stupidity even though they know it's wrong. And that's I think the most overall and most disgusting thing about it all is that these people that are supposed to be leading our nation are not doing what they're supposed to do.
And one final thing on this, it's been said a couple of times tonight that, we're happy that there hasn't been any casualties, etc. However, there has been casualties, and it's not people who wear the uniform. There was a Ukrainian airliner that was leaving Tehran, the capital of Iran.
Mhm.
It was mostly Iranians on the plane, but there were some Canadians that are not Iranians. It was mostly Ukrainians on the plane, but there were some Canadian students who had came over to Iran for something. A bunch of Ukrainians and some Iranians, obviously, on that flight. And the Iranian military thought that the plane could have been something that we sent over there, like as a retaliation for the missiles, and they shot it down. And so 170 people lost their life doing nothing but commuting from Iran to Ukraine. The Canadian folks was just catching a connection in Ukraine to go back to Canada. The Ukrainian folks were just going home, etc. But it was just people, out living their lives and ended up getting caught in the crossfire.
Now, yeah. Now, lastly, what made me think of that question really is, um, I was always told by my dad, there's no such thing as a fair fight, right? If you trying to hurt me, there's no fair fight. Like we're not gonna square up. If I can fucking get my hand on a weapon, I'm gonna get the weapon. You know what I'm saying? And I'm thinking, as a smaller country, why would I come out to you and tell you, oh yeah, by the way, we don't want no smoke. We just sent those 12 missiles so you know that we could do something if we wanted to. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Like if I'm them, I'm thinking, you know what, let's try to make this play on this big dummy. See if he bites, and on the back end, as soon as he turns around, we punch him in the back of the head. You know what I'm saying? And clearly, right, he probably has someone in his corner that's smart enough, that's thinking like that. um as EJ mentioned, there were individuals that were just sent recently to Iraq, and I'm sure there will be more in the case of. But it's just, we let our guard down, and because it seems peaceful, that's where things happen. Like, airports, they'll drop the security from a heightened orange to maybe a yellow, or something like that. And that's where people get through, and that's how there could be a potential another 9/11, because we fucking let our guard down.
Hmm.
you know
But part of it too, Steve, is that the leadership itself matters, right? So when you go back to the '80s with the Cold War during Reagan and I believe it was Khrushchev, I want to say, or it might have been the guy with the red patch on his face. I can't think of his name right now, but whoever the Russian president was at that time, or Soviet Union president, I should say, it was Soviet Union back then. Back when that at the height of the Cold War, you had people on the American side like, fuck it, we got to go to Russia. We got to start bombing these motherfuckers, And same thing on the other side, on the Russian side. But you had Reagan and whoever that Soviet Union president was at that time. You had cooler heads prevailing. They let the people who were the firebrands, the hawks, they talk their shit and they say, yeah, we're gonna go with the lighter option. The problem is here is we don't have that, right? Because they present this guy with the lighter options and then this super extreme option, and he's going 0 to 100. You know what I'm saying? And so I think that can end up getting us in a lot of trouble, if something was to jump off, or something more was to jump off, I should say.
Yeah. Well, let's just hope it doesn't.
Yeah.
um and if it does, let's wait, hope it's after, whatever. um After I get to see who killed Ghost, because man, fucking power, dog. Like, God, I don't know if you guys caught the first episode of the new season. Shit. EJ, you seen it?
Yeah. I
VP,
mean,
you
I've been
seen it?
hate watching it.
Yeah, I watched it.
I've been hate watching it for the last 2 or 3 seasons. I'm just watching it now at this point because I'm
Because you gotta
invested.
finish it.
Yeah, I gotta finish this shit,
It's
but it's
like
it's been so
like beating
trash,
off and
man.
not nothing if you don't finish watching.
You know what I mean? It's like exactly. It's like finding the worst porno you can find, and you're like, I just got to do it because I'm already started. I didn't think it was gonna be this bad, but I already started, so I gotta finish. That's crazy.
Yeah,
That's
man.
crazy.
I don't know, man. That shit's fucking. This episode was pretty stupid. It was so dumb. I didn't like the first episode. The whole play on Dre, and I don't know.
It's ridiculous, and I mean, just the I mean, just even the gunplay. I mean, let's let's keep in mind we're in New York City. Okay, they're in Lower Manhattan. And all of this gunplay is going on. I've never seen anything like it. Um, and then just the you do the flashbacks now to try to tie things together, and then just things that happen that just shouldn't happen, that don't need to happen. It's just like, where is it going, man? And it's pretty bad. I think ever since Angela got killed, it pretty much went to hell. But the writing has been the issue from the very beginning, and not from the very beginning, but from recently. And when I kind of saw the guy, I saw a interview with 50, one of the writers, Terrence J, and he just didn't seem like he knew what he was talking about. It's just one of those things. It had its run, and I always say, when shows last too long, you run the risk of doing this bullshit, and it should have ended a long time ago.
Yeah, I totally agree, man. You have a show that maybe was supposed to go 4, 5 season tops, and they keep trying to milk it. And in order to milk it, you have to add more shit in. And so that's when you got to start investing time into these secondary characters who are there to simply help the plot move along. But now you got to put time into them, and you got to understand that Dre had the church mom who didn't treat him good, and you got to spend time with Tommy, getting to know Lala's kid, and all
Mhm.
this kind of shit like that, man. Tommy meeting his dad and all that bogus bullshit, because they're trying to fill time to keep the show going. But when I watched this episode, I wasn't under any I didn't have any
Expectations.
expectation that they would tell us who shot Ghost the very first episode after the break. However, I definitely didn't see it going the route that it went. And and I was extremely disappointed, man, because you could literally see them milking this shit. You could see next episode we're probably gonna spend time with Paz and that prosecutor guy Sachs and Lorenz Tate. And then in episode 3, we got to spend time with Tommy, Tariq, and Tasha before they finally tell us who shot this motherfucker. And then they even playing with your head with the who killed Ghost. Ghost ain't dead. Everybody who ever watched a TV show knows if you don't see this motherfucker in a casket or a body bag, they ain't dead. You know what I mean? So like, why even try to hit us with this fake out bullshit?
I mean, I agree. I just hope that every episode is not a prequel to what happened before he got shot for
Oh,
each
it will be.
individual,
Yeah.
It
because
will be.
that's gonna make me mad. But then it's just, you know what, you can live with that if it's not stupid shit. Like, all right, when's the last time you ever heard of in real life fucking transport police officers stopping on the side of the road so a fucking prisoner can piss?
You can
I'm
piss
like, they're
under
not.
a bridge.
I was like, nah, they won't stop. Nah,
Under a
oh,
bridge.
nah, he won't let him go behind that pillar. Nah, he's not gonna take his eyes off of him just because he says he doesn't need to look at him. Nah, there's no way he. Oh, okay, I'm done.
And then he just happened to run off under a random bridge in New York City with no real way to out. It's just it was stupid, man. It was so
And
stupid.
I had so much enough of Dre in fucking this scene. He's super thugged out, and the next scene he's fucking crying and pussy whooped by his mom or his fucking daughter. All right, we get it. You got a soft side, dog. We don't need to see that shit. It was like every time he's seen, but mom, I really get the fuck out of here. That shit was it was so bad.
Yeah.
And then he had 100K, right? And then he decides, nah, I gotta go kill Ghost. I gotta go do a
Right,
take care.
right.
You know what I'm
You're
saying? And
running
then
away
and
with,
then
yeah, stupid
and then
motherfucker.
minutes to get caught. It's just like, come on, man. What was the other thing? Oh yeah, then him going to press Tasha at the daycare. Like, I don't
That was
like
useless as fuck.
like, huh? Like what? It makes no sense. And then somehow Tariq is able to scrap up this money from doing all of it. It's just like, come on, man. It's
Yeah.
For selling drugs at Juilliard and shit, like he's fucking Tupac.
I can't
Fuck.
take it, man. I can't take it. I really can't take it. It's really gone to hell, man. But
Yeah.
sidebar, did you guys catch The Watchmen?
I haven't watched that yet. I keep hearing good things, but haven't watched it.
All right. We'll
No,
weigh in when you watch it.
on HBO.
Yeah.
Nah, same thing. I heard that it's really good. I do plan on watching it. I just hadn't had a chance to, but I do plan on watching this shit. I heard it
Yeah.
is good though.
Yeah. Same
We'll we should weigh in when y'all finally watch it. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's all I'm
definitely.
gonna say.
Definitely. I definitely want to catch that. But yeah, I don't know, man. I just have to see a little bit more out of this. I mean, like you said, we have to watch it to the end because we got to know what the fuck's going on and how it ends. And hopefully it ends and they're not like, oh, guess what? We signed another season. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? Like, I really don't want to see Tariq fucking trying to become the next Ghost. Um, you guys think Tommy dies?
No.
EJ
No.
don't even care. He's like, man,
At this
whatever.
point, at this point, it's like, I mean, Tommy should have died again, like in early in this season when Benny the butcher here, Benny freaking
Had him
the same
cornered.
guy that freaking scares Vincent away because he's got more muscle, right? And who they were fucking terrified of. He fucking finds out Tommy did this and then goes to kill him with a knife.
A pocket knife for some shit.
A knife. And he doesn't use any of his muscle, any of his power. No one comes for revenge after. Tommy should have been dead then. You know, it's just crazy, man. And then Drake gets out of their shootout the way that he did in the warehouse. I'm done, man. I'm done. I'm only watching because I have to at this point. I'm so disappointed.
And then they burned Dre up in the fucking okay. All
No sprinklers going off, nothing.
right. Sprinklers. Yeah. Yeah, no alarm. No alarm. I've had enough. I've had enough. I'm gonna finish it, but I've definitely had enough. I mean, I guess, they're able to film in New York because there's no traffic going to like Madison Square Garden because the Knicks are trash.
Oh man, that's foul.
um and you know there's no traffic going towards New Brunswick or Jersey because the Giants suck and so do the Jets.
Well, we beat the Cowboys.
Ah, here we go.
Just saying.
Um
We were 3-1 versus the NFC East
you
this
were
year.
you were definitely 3-1 against the NFCs. That's the Super Bowl for you guys. Um Hey, at least you have a chance at the division now. You think the savior of the AFC East is coming back to um the Patriots next year?
Can't hear Vari. um, do I? I believe he will. I highly doubt that he won't. But if he does come back and there is some kind of schism between him and Bill, I think Kraft will sacrifice Bill before he sacrifices Tom Brady. Because throughout these playoffs, while they haven't been able to score a lot, not throughout the playoffs, but throughout the latter part of the season, the defense really began to struggle. Um, but I don't know, man. I just hope that what we're seeing right now is the end. I just hope that Bill's genius is done, and I hope Tom's genius is done. But for me as a Jets fan, I still think we're going to be at the bottom of the AFC East. I think the Bills, even if the Patriots, do go down, I think the Bills will be number one. I hate to say it, unless the Dolphins completely botch this draft, which is very possible. They'll be number two, and the Patriots, whatever would be left of them, will probably still be better than us because of Adam Gase.
So I definitely agree with what EJ said. But I think Tom comes back, and part of the reason I think he comes back is that he's already said he excuse me, he's already said that he wants to come back. Number one. Two, he has a very strong relationship with Robert Kraft, the owner of the Patriots, and we already see what happened with the Jimmy Garoppolo situation, where Belichick was ready to put Garoppolo in as a starter, and Robert Kraft sided with Brady, right? And it's one thing for you to side with Brady and your franchise goes to shit. They win a Super Bowl shortly after that, right? And all the success that this franchise has known, they've known it on the arm of Tom Brady, right? Arm of Tom Brady and the foot of the guy,
Vinatieri. No,
Vinatieri. There you go.
Vinatieri and
Um,
Goskowski. Yep.
yeah. So, you know, I could see Robert Kraft siding with Brady again to basically, let him go out on his own terms. The guy has won 6 Super Bowls and, MVP, all that kind of shit like that, Hall of Famer. Um, and so I could see them deciding to kind of let him go out on his own terms, especially since when you look at what's out there, there's not really much in free agency in the way of quarterbacks, and there's not much in the draft, let alone that the Patriots are going to be picking at the bottom half of the draft. And they're not going to find a quarterback there unless they go out and you could find a Russell Wilson type in the 3rd round or something like that. So if he wants to continue playing, you might as well let him play because the things that you're going to need to move on from him aren't there yet.
Yeah, I think I mean, it's inevitable if he comes back to the NFL, he's going to play for the Patriots. It doesn't make sense for him to go anywhere else. I see a lot of people talking about what if he goes here, what if he goes there. He's dumb as shit if he goes anywhere else. His legacy, people are already talking about the drop off, right? Because he's not mobile. Um, and just this season he wasn't himself. He didn't, he was overthrowing people, he was missing throws, he was underthrowing people, and he just was not mobile at all. I think he only ran for 35 yards this year. I mean,
Damn.
he had 3 touchdowns. I think he only ran for 35 yards if I remember correctly, when I was looking at it. Which is nothing at all. Um, so yeah, I think he comes back to Patriots. His idol being Joe Montana. Joe Montana switched teams at the end of his career, yada yada yada. I don't foresee that happening, and I think that's what people are doing. Are they're comparing him to Joe Montana? But the Patriots, as a franchise, have to understand, like EJ said, all success came from this man, and there's no way that he's always taken pay cuts. He's always restructured for the good of the team. He's always been in the middle of whatever scandal it is, for the good of the team to try and win.
Get me started.
And so you got to do right by this guy. And if he decides he wants to play another year, 2 or 3, I think the Patriots owe it to him to give him a shot, even if he looks like shit and he looks old. It is what it is at this point. They just got to build around them, and ideally, right? They made the playoffs, and if, let's say, AB would have been mentally sane somehow once he got to the Patriots, he could have been a difference maker. They
Yeah.
brought in Mohamed Sanu with the hopes of him being able to be that second wide receiver, or that number one wide receiver with Julian Edelman under, and he didn't pan out. Sanu looked good because he was alongside fucking Julio Jones, and Julio Jones was getting triple teamed. So yeah, as the second receiver to Julio Jones, you're gonna look good. As the fucking outside receiver with Julian Edelman coming across, people are gonna make Julian Edelman beat him for fucking 5 yards instead of letting Sanu beat him. So I think that's what we saw this year. And AB obviously can beat coverage, he can beat double coverage, and that was a big loss for them. They would have, I think that could have been a difference maker, definitely, for them to at least beat Tennessee, and then who knows going forward, or possibly even have gotten the bye, because they may not have lost to the Dolphins, or the useless games that they ended up losing at the
Mhm.
end of the season. So
And to kind of piggyback on your point, Steve, where you started off at saying that given what he's done for the franchise, they have to kind of let him go out his own way. And you don't see that a lot in sports, more basketball than you do in football. But one place where we recently saw it was with Green Bay. And Green Bay kind of let Favre go out his own way. And Favre didn't do nearly as much for Green Bay as Brady has done for New England.
right.
And then also in Favre, unlike Green Bay, New England doesn't have Aaron Rodgers waiting, right? They don't. They have nothing. You know what I'm saying? They already let go of Jimmy Garoppolo. They let go of Brissett, and like I said earlier, there's not really deep quarterback availability in the draft, so they're kind of stuck with him. You know, and until maybe next year there's more available to draft, or maybe some backup becomes the shit, and they can get a trade or something like that. But for right now, they're pretty much stuck with Brady.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's my only thing that I think is a saving grace either way, because Bill Belichick, and like you alluded to, VP, kind of wanted to move along because he kind of sees the long game and what needs to happen. But the Crafts, they playing the loyalty game, which I think is ultimately it's gonna have to blow up in your face at some point,
Mm-hmm.
because you're not establishing a solid offensive juggernaut going forward. The culture there is while Bill is there, is not going to be desirable for a lot of free agents, and the future of your quarterback status. You potentially had two guys, one in Garoppolo and even in Brissett, that could have possibly taken on the helm and done well. We also don't know what a quarterback other than Tom Brady is going to look like inside this system. I mean, we had two examples, but you've gotten rid of anybody that was any good. So now you're gonna have to gamble on the next person, which they might be very good at scouting, but you got a Josh McDaniels that is trying to get out. So I don't know, man. I hope that this will be the end. It's hard to bet against them, but for the sake of the AFC East, I hope this is the end in the next year or two.
Right. And the thing, like you said, with the scouting, New England does definitely seem to have a great scouting department. Flores was started off in New England as a scout and then eventually rose through the coaching ranks. But the thing, I've said this to somebody before and they kind of poo-pooed it. New England didn't draft Tom Brady thinking, oh shit, how the fuck did Brady fall to us in the seventh, right? You draft the quarterback with your 7th round pick with no intention of this motherfucker ever playing. He's the
Right.
guy who's gonna throw balls to the dudes on the practice squad. He's the guy who's gonna throw to the receivers in practice. He's gonna get out there and work with the twos every now and then, and he's gonna read his playbook, have his clipboard, wear his headset. He don't even got to take a shower when the game's over because he's not gonna sweat. They had no intention of Tom Brady playing as the starting quarterback. It's just circumstances happen, right? And then it turns out the guy is pretty good. But given the history of things, I feel like people look at it and say, man, like New England was looking down this long, path, and it's like, how the fuck did this guy? I can't believe teams passed on this guy. Like come on, man. It turns out it was a great fucking move, but I don't look at it like it was some fucking 3-dimensional chess wizardry or some shit.
Yeah. New England was genius. They were geniuses. They saw that nobody would want him and knew that he would just be a 6-time fucking champion.
Right. You know what I mean?
Fuck out of here. I can't see how they would fit anybody else into that system either. I mean, I'm sure Bill is pretty good. McDaniel's a great offensive coordinator. We talked about. I don't think there's been any word of him leaving and going to the Browns yet, but so
He meets with them tomorrow, I think.
Mhm.
okay. So he made Tebow look pretty good. So I don't think it would be too hard to plug a quarterback into that system with, additional added talent, above Edelman and the James White dump offs and shit like that. But yeah, I don't know, man. The AFC East, the Buffalo looks really good. The Jets they're the Jets. They're gonna get 7 wins a year. Miami's got picks for days. Um, and as long as they don't fuck them up, right? I mean, I still think that they got to bring in 1 or 2 vets. You can't have a whole team of rookies, and your one vet can't be fucking Ryan Fitzpatrick. Like you need you know, I think you need a veteran presence, and I think even if I'm Miami, I, go ahead and I don't think it's gonna happen because it's in the division, but Le'Veon Bell wouldn't be a horrible pickup because you guys have the picks to get him an offensive line. Um, but again, because it's in the division, I don't know if the Jets would be willing to shell that off to you guys.
I mean,
Well,
it's Gase, so it definitely could happen because he doesn't care about good players. He's willing to shed them. The one thing I
Douglas.
will say
Yeah.
about Flores, Steve, is that you talk about, or EJ said it earlier too, but you guys are saying as long as Miami don't blow these picks, you something could be happening there, And the last week, Flores has really scared me. I believe in this guy. He's got me to buy in. But this last week, man, these moves. We hired a DB coach, the guy who's going to be our defensive backs coach next season. This dude was a high school head coach, no NFL coaching experience, and Flores hired him. So either Flores got an eye for talent, he sees a diamond in the rough, or he's fucking batshit crazy. But I mean, granted, this guy's a position coach. It's not like he hired him to be the assistant head coach or something. But a move like that is scaring me for a young, rookie head coach.
Mm, yep. I
Yeah.
mean, they could have hired me. I'm pretty good at Madden.
Right?
Uh,
you know?
I don't lose very much on Madden, so he could have definitely got me in there. But yeah, man, I'm glad that our coach is gone. Uh, Jason Garrett, he overstayed his welcome by 11 years. 10 years as a coach, and the last year of him being an offensive coordinator was not very wasn't a good honeymoon. So I don't understand how we held on to him. I look forward
Jury.
to, yeah, I look forward to Mike McCarthy. I think Mike McCarthy was a safe hire. I think it was a fan base hire. It was, let's get a guy in here that has some history in the league, a guy in here that has history with winning, a guy in here that has beat the shit out of us in the playoffs twice with Aaron Rodgers. So as a fan base, people that are fickly minded, like we've talked about, and they don't remember his failures and how his tenure ended in Green Bay. They'll think, oh well, yeah, he was so good in Green Bay. He had Aaron Rodgers. He made Aaron Rodgers what he was, which, I don't know if that's true. Hopefully, if it's the case, we'll see. But part of my concern is if he is a pass heavy guy and we just paid Zeke, that's the problem we have now that we're not running the ball, right? So yeah.
While his passing percentage in Green Bay was high, we also got to remember they didn't have a stable running back in Green Bay. They had Ty Montgomery, who was a wide
A
receiver,
wide receiver.
start lining up at running back. So they didn't really have that. Um, and the thing is about Holmgren. I mean, not Holmgren. Sheesh. McCarthy. Um, the thing about McCarthy is, I've said this 1,000 times about franchises. I don't understand why. If a guy has a winning pedigree, there are a few coaches that are active today that are not 70 or 70 and above that have actively won or not actively that have actually won the Super Bowl as the head coach. You got guys that were coordinators, you got guys that were there, you got guys that were in the front office. McCarthy is a guy who was calling the shots and won the Super Bowl. The only other guys you got right now that are coaching right now, Gruden, Carroll,
Belichick,
Harbaugh, Belichick. That's only four guys.
Peyton.
That's only Sean Payton, five other guys, and Tomlin, six other guys.
Tomlin,
Yeah.
yeah.
Six other guys that I could think of right now that are not super old, minus Belichick, because you can kind of say he's in that old range, but let's just leave him in there. Six guys right now, other than McCarthy, that won as a head coach, won it all. And when you look at what he did in Green Bay, I don't give a shit what anybody says. the Packers haven't gone on since he's left. They struggled, granted with injuries. Aaron Rodgers was talking shit about the coach at some point. You didn't hear any of that bullshit when McCarthy was there. This guy, I believe, if you win as a head coach, you gotta know what you're fucking doing, man. And the Cowboys needed this after years of having Garrett, and the only saving grace of having Garrett is because your owner is in love with him. You gotta go with somebody who knows how to win as a head coach, and that's been my issue with the Jets for years and years and years. We keep experimenting with people, giving them a shot just because, and we're not going with someone who knows how to win. Even if their play calling is outdated or whatever you want to say, any knock you want to say, I'd rather go into battle as a player with a guy who knows what a locker room, a Super Bowl winning locker room culture should feel like. So it's not gonna be, hey, no betting on this plane. Hey, none of that bullshit snorting coke, my offensive line coach. None of that bullshit is going on. He knows
Shots.
what it takes to win. And I think for the Cowboys, Jerry, I think Jerry really swallowed his pride on this because he's kind of letting you know, hey, I'm getting older. Um, I've been doing it my way for 10 years. The shit hasn't worked. I've had a stool pigeon. Hey, even though I may not really relinquish a lot of power with this guy, I'm gonna try. And by the time Jerry really tries to fuck this up, McCarthy might win it, might be winning. And I mean, we've seen this before in the past. Even when he brought in what was it, guy from Miami,
Jimmy Johnson.
Jimmy Johnson. Jimmy won on the national level in college, and he virtually said, fuck you, Jerry. I'm going to do what I need to do. So even if this gets you one Super Bowl and Jerry does Jerry shit and fires him, fuck it, you got one. You know what I mean? You got to have someone that has championship caliber. We see other teams are going out there getting college coaches from fucking Baylor. Like Baylor hasn't won shit. They haven't won shit, man. I don't give a fuck what anybody says. Baylor is not a program that I'd have taken their head coach from. I'm not. I'm just not doing it. You know what I mean? So I kind of salute Jerry in this regard of getting McCarthy. Of course, the fucking Jets, because of Mike McCagnon being threatened by a guy who could do a head coach job and GM, didn't want to hire him when he said he wanted to be the head coach of the Jets. We didn't get him. So once again, we missed out on a guy with Super Bowl head coach caliber. Fucking idiot. Fuck you, Mike McCagnon.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely right, EJ. The one thing that I thought, I said this to my brother the other day. I actually don't think Jerry Jones intended to fire Jason Garrett. When you look at what transpired, where Jason Garrett wasn't let go on Black Monday, when most of the NFL coaches were let go, in my mind, one of two things was happening. One, Jerry was saying, "We're the Cowboys. We're the richest franchise in the NFL, so we don't fire our coaches when the rest of the coaches get fired. We're gonna wait some time." Or two, the thing that I think that was more likely happening, especially given that Jerry and Jason Garrett had like 3 meetings, I think Jerry was intending to keep Jason Garrett, but maybe diminish his power some, where maybe, they were going to have another coach who decides if they go for it on 4th down or if they go for 2, where Jason Garrett was going to essentially be a figurehead, and somebody else was really calling the shots. Because I don't understand why it took so long to fire him after the season ended this year. I mean, how it took 10 years to begin with, but especially after this season ended, it took way too long. So I think Jerry actually was trying to keep him. In regards to hiring Mike McCarthy, I definitely agree with what EJ was saying. There's nothing wrong with having a coach with some championship pedigree. There's only a few active coaches in this league who have won Super Bowls. But at the same time, you don't get to win a Super Bowl if you don't get a shot, right? And part of my problem with what happened over the offseason, or not over the offseason, but over this last week or so with all these vacancies for coaches, was the lack of young coaches, as well as the lack of black coaches being hired. and especially from a franchise like the Cowboys, given how big of a spotlight is on that franchise. For Jerry Jones to bring in a guy like Marvin Lewis to give him a token interview with no intentions of hiring him when they knew that they were going to hire Mike McCarthy once that coaching position opened up. I thought it was just complete bullshit, you know. And one of the names that you keep seeing being floated around is the offensive coordinator for the Chiefs,
Eric
Eric,
Bieniemy.
yeah, Eric Bieniemy, you know. And people are saying like, what do you have to do as a black person or a person of color to become a head coach in this league? This guy is running one of the best offenses in the NFL, like bar none, and he can't get a serious head coaching interview. And I'm not saying like, oh, guy has a good offense that translates into you got to make him a head coach. But you turn back and you see a guy like a Josh McDaniels who keeps getting interview after interview after interview, and he's a good coordinator. I'm not trying to take that away from him, but this guy Eric Bieniemy seems to just be he's just being looked over, and not just him, but other good black coaches in this league. And then you see the Giants go out and hire the Patriots wide receivers coach, a guy who nobody knows. You know what I mean? It seems like they just picked this shit out of a hat, or they threw a dart. They had some names on the wall, threw a dart, and it was like, oh, Joe Judge. Let's get him a contract. Like that shit seems utterly ridiculous to me. This guy may be a great coach. Andy Reid was never a coordinator. Andy Reid was a quarterback's coach, and then Philly hired him as their head coach, right? So maybe they see something in this guy the same way Philly saw something in Andy Reid all those years ago. But the fact that the Rooney Rule is basically a joke now, and that these coaches, these black coaches, these minority coaches, whether black, Hispanic, etc., people of color, aren't getting real interviews, I think it's just complete bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, you look at a Matt Rule, like I said again, who coached at fucking Baylor. Then you got the Giants wide receivers coach, which really ain't saying shit. Cause last couple years you know what, I go on there. It says, Eric Bieniemy interviewed for both the Panthers and Giants job. So you mean to tell me that this guy who is coaching one of the most prolific offenses in NFL history
Mm-hmm.
couldn't get a job with the Carolina Panthers that have the league's best offensive weapon, one of the league's best offensive weapons in the backfield, and you get Matt Rule from Baylor? Matt Rule? Really? It's disgusting, man. It's disgusting. And I have nothing for it. I'm not surprised. I'm not shocked. It's just it sucks, man. It really sucks. It truly sucks.
I mean, I agree. I agree to an extent, right? But end of the day, I think it's just like the corporate world. If you don't interview well, you're not getting the job. You could be the best candidate for the job. You could be doing the job, and if somebody comes in and interviews well, with the same resume or a similar resume or a better resume, they're gonna get the gig over you, right? And one of the things that you have to keep in mind is that when you talk about the Giants were looking at Rule first, and then they went with Judge, right? And with the Panthers, I mean, the, the Baylor coach, he's just been highly sought after for years now, right? I agree with you, EJ. They haven't won shit, but as a program, they put out some pretty decent talent, quarterback, etc.
Ooh.
Um,
He
RG3.
Next,
wasn't the coach then.
Hmm.
He
he wasn't
wasn't
the
the coach
coach with
then.
RG3.
He
He was
wasn't.
only the coach 2017 to 2019.
Oh
Mm-hmm.
wow.
And under his regime, they've only gone, I think, 19 and 19, and I think they're 1 and 1 in bowl games. So he's fucking subpar. even in that regard.
Matt Rule has been in the spotlight simply because he kind of has this reputation of being a quote unquote turnaround artist, where the school that he was at before Baylor, he got there, that school sucked, and then very quickly, I think it was within like 2 or 3 seasons, he had them winning 10 games and competing for a bowl game. Granted, it was like some of those subpar bowl games, like the fucking, Tootsie Roll Bowl or something
Texas
like that.
Bowl. He
But
finished 6-6 and got to the Texas Bowl, and they beat
so
Vanderbilt.
so that's kind of where this hire comes from, is that, oh, this guy's a turnaround artist and Carolina needs to be turned around, right? But at the end of the day, you have a guy in the Kansas City offensive coordinator who essentially turned around his entire franchise with 3 rookies, three guys out of college in Tariq Hill, Pat Mahomes, and Kareem Hunt, and just completely turn that franchise around. 30, 40 points a game throughout the season. You know what I'm saying? It's one thing that, you put up 30, 40, 3 times a year. You know what I mean? Every team has that one Sunday where they ball out. I mean, these motherfuckers was like averaging 40 points a game. Patrick Mahomes out there looking like he's playing with a fucking cheat code or something. And for this dude to get token interviews, and to your point, Steve, where you say if you don't interview well, I mean, I understand it. That's common sense. But if we're going for a job in corporate America, right, and they bring in 2 well-qualified white guys and then a fucking 3-year-old, like, what do you expect's going to happen? You know what I'm saying? And a lot of times what you guys see, or not you guys, but what you see is, which is how the Rooney Rule is kind of just is basically a joke now. I get why it was put in place, and I think that it was good that it was put in place, but the NFL needs to do something about it, because now what you see a lot of teams doing, they say we want to hire Mike McCarthy or Matt Rule, whoever. Okay, we're gonna hire this guy, and then let's bring in this DB coach from San Fran. We'll interview him for 2 hours and then send him packing. And then we'll hire Mike McCarthy because we've met our obligation of interviewing a black coach. And that's the problem with the rule, is that they don't bring in candidates who they think can do the job. They bring in somebody to check a box and then hire who they wanted to hire from the jump, where you're not necessarily interviewing people and say, man, we brought this guy in, and he really interviewed strong. Like, we might have made this guy our coach. They had no intention of hiring Marvin Lewis when the Cowboys brought him in, or any of these other franchises with whatever token black coach they brought in. And that's the problem.
Shit, Marvin Lewis is more qualified than Rule is. I mean, Rule, again, the Baylor Bears had a 1-11 season in 2017. Then he comes in 2018. They finished 6-6, go to the Texas Bowl. They beat Vanderbilt. Vandy, although in the SEC, has never been a top contender in the SEC. The best pro recently that I can think of is Jay Cutler. We can argue that. Um, then they finished 7-6. 2019, this very past season, mind you, they play in the Big 12, where defense is very slight. They only really got to contend with Oklahoma most of the year, right? So they finish 11-1. They lose to Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship game, and then get crushed by Georgia. And so you go and get this guy, like, what? I mean, and you look through his head coaching experience. He was a offensive assistant offensive line coach for the Giants at one point. But I mean, nothing on his resume. He has extensive experience coaching, but I mean, as a head coach, he's only been a head coach twice. Once at Temple and once at Baylor.
But
I mean,
you can't have your cake and eat it too. And when I point this at VP, where you say you want teams to do new and exciting stuff and take chances on people. This is the Panthers taking a chance on a guy who they think can do the job, right? You know, when you talk about the Cowboys, I agree. They had no fucking intention of hiring Marvin Lewis at all whatsoever. Um, They definitely wanted McCarthy. While I appreciate the Rooney Rule, I don't think it. I don't think that you can hold it against a team if they have their mind jet set on a person, and they have to, conform to that rule. Them doing something like bringing in a Marvin Lewis or some other scumbag like what's the other, not scumbag, but what's the dude that coached Cleveland before with the bald head?
Hugh Jackson.
Hugh Jackson, right? And Marvin Lewis is a fucking loser. He's not a winning coach. He's fucking
I mean,
he's
he took the lowly ass Bengals 7 out of 9
7 times to the
seasons
playoffs.
straight to the playoffs. I mean, it's better than fucking Matt Rule. I mean, and then you look
how
at the
many times
Panthers.
did they make it past the first round?
I get it, but it's still the NFL, and you got this guy Matt Rule who just now won 11 games and still lost the Big 12 championship and a bowl game. The Carolina Panthers were ranked 20th out of 32 in offense. They can't fucking score. So you mean to tell me you don't get the most talented offensive mind in the league to help you at your worst problem? It makes no fucking sense.
Right, but when you're talking about the old coordinator from Kansas City, what could be hurting him is people attribute the success of that offense partially to Andy Reid. A lot of it is blamed on Andy Reid because of his avid use of his running backs, right, out of the backfield. That's an Andy Reid thing. He did that in Philly. He was a good coach in Philly. He's a good coach in Kansas City, right? So it's possible that this guy goes in and he bombs the interview, or he goes in and he can't present it to make it appear as if he's the one that's making
Why
the
do we
calling
think that?
calling the shots.
Why
I'm
would
not.
we ever even think that?
There's because Andy Reid has always been known as an offensive guru.
No, I'm saying why does the notion even come into play that maybe he bombed the interview?
Not that he bombed, because I'm just thinking of reasons why we're assuming, you guys are assuming that he didn't get the job because he's black, right? As opposed to the 150,000 other possibilities of the fact that he either could have potentially had a shitty interview, or he went in there and he tried to speak to the playbook and couldn't speak to the playbook, or he went in there and didn't have the mentality of, hey, I want to win now, or he didn't have a clear set plan of, I'm gonna win now, or he didn't have a fucking 2 to 3 year plan like we go in corporate America with a 30, 60, 90. He may not have had a 2 to 3 year plan to say, hey, within the next 2 to 3 years, these are the changes that I think can be made. This is how I'm going to develop Cam Newton. This is how I'm going to continue to use McCaffrey. This is how I'm going to replace the loss of Greg Olsen, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? Um, who knows what could have stopped him? Assuming that he just didn't get the gig because he's black. I mean, it's too easy to think that way. I can see where VP comes at, where like I said, with the Cowboys and Marvin Lewis, and them making a mockery of that, because everyone knows Marvin Lewis wasn't getting that job. Everyone did. But this, again, you're forcing their hand. You're making the teams do that, right? It's hard to say we need the NFL to step in and do something about it. The NFL is forcing this to happen, right? It's a rule that they put in place to happen, and it's great for them to be progressive and try to to try to support us and allow us to be successful in the league. But at at the end of the day, the owner is the owner. The owner owns the team. They make their money. They make their decision, and if their decision is to go with a fucking white person 7 times, they fucking fire a coach. They bring in 7 white people. That is their fucking choice. You know what I'm saying? And we can be critical of it, but there's no way for us to point out 100% and say, yeah, nobody picked this guy up because he's black.
So
Let
so
me get
Steve,
in. Let me
what?
jump in this real fast. I'm gonna go and say at the end of the day, yeah, they can hire whoever the fuck they want. I don't. It is what it is. But I'm not gonna give any energy to the idea that he interviewed badly. Not even gonna fucking do it. Not remotely. Not even close. Not even gonna try. Um, he got a job as an offensive coordinator. So I'm gonna assume that he actually knows what he's doing. He's the same point that you made about Andy Reid is the same thing that has other guys getting jobs. The Andy Reid coaching tree, and because of his reputation, and VP, I'm cutting back. You're cutting back in. I just said I'm dispelling any fucking belief or idea that he interviewed badly because he got an offensive coordinating job under Andy Reid. And using Steve's point to Andy Reid, anybody that's under the Andy Reid coaching tree is known to be well groomed, known to be well trained, known to be relatively successful. Harbaugh, it's guys that when you get coached by, or whether rather when you come from the Andy Reid coaching tree, he's one of those coaches that you're critically acclaimed to know that you're gonna know what the fuck you're doing. So to your very point of saying the success might be because of Andy Reid, on the contrary, I will utilize the fact that he is under Andy Reid, which makes him more of a prize to most teams. Now, I didn't outright come out and say it's because he's black or he's not, but it's pretty implicit that there's something here. And the fact that this guy was so critically acclaimed to not get these jobs, and you go with it, for me, it's not even just a black or the white thing. I think the slap in the face comes from me when you go with a guy from fucking Baylor that has done nothing. You know what I mean? Give me Urban Meyer. Give me fucking Les Miles. Give me fucking anybody else that has actually done something. That's to me where it becomes a larger issue, and it happens to be that the enemy is black. And why would he be so sought after if he was so horrible? I don't buy it. To me, it's some bullshit. Um, and it's a good old boys league. That's just what it is. We know this.
And I definitely agree with that. What EJ was just saying, and Steve, the reason why I can say with fair certainty, not 100%, but I would say 90+% certainty that the reason Eric Bieniemy doesn't have a job as a head coach is because he's black. And the reason why I will tell you that is because Freddie Kitchens was a head coach in this league. Matt Rule is a head coach in this league. Joe Judge is a head coach in this league, right? Adam Gase is a head coach in this league. You know what I mean? And it's reasons like that is why I can say this guy is not getting this job because he's black. And I'm not saying that the owners who are not hiring him are just flat out racist or whatever, but it's that a lot of black folks, whether you're talking sports, corporate America, whatever, we don't get the kind of opportunities that people, Caucasian white folks get, to kind of, maybe wing it and see what happens. You know what I'm saying? You can look throughout society and, find things where we have to go above and beyond. We earlier in the episode today, we were talking about politics. We had the last president was a Harvard graduate, one wife, lovely family, straight arrow, no trouble his entire life, super educated, Harvard lawyer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All of that to become president. The guy who replaces him is a reality TV show host. You know what I'm saying?
More than
You
that.
look you you look at you look at the NFL where a guy like Joe Judge is hired by the Giants, and when I was reading his background, like he was like a running backs coach here, and maybe he coached another position there. And then this year he's a wide receivers coach, and now he's a head coach in this job. EJ's going over Matt Rule's resume, right? Adam Gase, okay, people said, oh, he was this quarterback whisperer with Peyton Manning, etc. Let's hire him in Miami. Abysmal job. He gets fired, Jets pick him right up, you know. And so you can see stuff like that, and then say part of the reason why these guys aren't getting these jobs is because they're black. Michael Harriot, which is a guy who writes for The Root, he wrote an article talking about political commentators, for example. He went back on Meet the Press, which is a Sunday morning news program, comes on Sunday mornings on NBC, right? and he looked at the guest list going back an entire year. So every Sunday for 1 year, he went back and looked at the guests, and every black guest who was on the show, except for one, had either a master's degree or a doctorate degree in whatever the field they studied that they were coming on that show to talk about. The host of that show dropped out of college, went to journalism school, but he dropped out. He's the host of that show, right? You see what I'm saying? And so it's things like that that make me feel like it's because they're black. Another guy I follow on Twitter wrote a thing about baseball managers in Major League Baseball history. I'm sorry for looking down. I'm looking on my phone to read this thing. There've only been 15 black managers, right? All of them were former all-stars, meaning that they had to be at the tippy fucking top of their profession to even be considered. 3 were former MVPs. Only 7 ever got a second job, and only 2 ever received a third job. You see
Dusty
what I'm
Baker
saying?
is one of them.
Yeah. And so the type of opportunities that you get as a coach in these leagues when you're white is different than black folks. And that's how you could have a guy like Josh McDaniels, who, even as great as he is as a coordinator, he went to Denver. He was not a good a head coach, in my opinion. To spend
Chip,
your first round
Chip,
draft pick on Tim Tebow, that don't make sense to me, right?
Chip Kelly, the failure that was Chip Kelly.
Exactly. And both of these guys, they're still sought after. They're highly sought after.
Well, yeah. Listen, like I said, I don't disagree that the league that it's not there, right? That there's not an abundance of white coaches. That there's not um, an unfair playing field. We know that there's an unfair playing field every day that you wake up brown. For the white person that does the exact same job as you, the white person that fucking does a job under you. There is an unfair playing field. We understand that 100%. We always will. And it's a struggle that we'll deal with and our kids will deal with. Um, I just feel like when you're targeting specifically the NFL in this sense, the NFL put that rule in place, right? You can't get mad at teams for bringing in these guys, interviewing them, and then moving on with it. If it was their agenda to fucking only have white coaches or just hire white coaches, is it fucked up? Absolutely. But you put a rule in place that says you must have have a conversation with someone of color, and then you get mad when they do it and then don't hire them. You know what I'm saying? Sure, maybe they are better candidates. We could say that. We can assume that from our eyes here. We're not the professionals, and that's all I'm saying is it's hard to say without a shadow of a doubt that one specific team didn't hire someone because they're black. When you look back at it, you got Flores who has a job, you got Tomlin who has a job. They're proven winner. Well, it's proven winner. And then when you start to talk about, he came to EJ's point. Well, he's from Andy Reid's coaching tree, and those guys are successful. Sure. What about all the guys that came from the Belichick coaching tree? Matt Patricia looks like shit in Detroit. Tennessee's coach, it's slipping my mind right
Mike
now.
Vrabel.
Mike Vrabel has looked like shit up until this year, and it took for fucking Ryan Tannehill to go in there and turn that franchise around for him to look like he was pretty decent, and Derrick Henry. So yes, the Belichick tree hasn't looked so great. And so when you're saying, oh well, the Andy Reid tree, it should give him a one up. Yeah, sure, maybe. But again, to that same point, if I'm somebody that's like, man, Andy Reid was a really good offensive mind in Philly, and now he's gone to Kansas City, and Kansas City's offense looks great. I'm not gonna think, oh well, maybe it was the running back coach that turned offensive coordinator. I'm gonna think, well, Andy Reid has always been offensive. He's created this, and also not only that, you have Patrick Mahomes, who it's not like you took somebody like Mahomes, who was struggling and made him good. It's not like Mahomes came out and was shit and got better, under that coaching tree. He came out good and fucking, hit the ground running. Somebody that you would want to look
He
at,
did
I
sit a
would say,
year. He did sit a year.
But
well, he
Steve,
sat a year because they had Alex Smith. So he wasn't sitting because he was bad. He was sitting because they had someone that they felt was better.
Yeah, but he was still
Um,
under that umbrella of learning.
that
It
could have been
wasn't like
Alex
he
Smith that
just
taught him.
but Steve, I'm not saying that you got just because you interview a black coach, you got to hire him. My problem is that you don't bring in serious candidates to interview, right? And I remember Randy Shannon said this. He used to be the head coach of the Hurricanes years back. And he was like, you can tell when you go to a token interview. And they asked him how. It was an interview on ESPN. And he says, when you go for a real head coaching interview, the interview lasts like 4 or 5 hours. Like you bring like printouts and all kind of stuff to kind of show them, your idea of what to do with the offense. Like you were saying earlier, this is how I plan on replacing this player that we lost. This is how I want to get fresher. This is how I want to get faster, or whatever the case may be. These interviews, you're doing PowerPoint presentations, touring the facility. These interviews last 4 or 5 hours, right? They might even bring you back a second time to interview just to make sure. You know what I'm saying? But he was like, when you do these token interviews, you go in there 75 minutes, maybe 90, they sit down and pretend they're listening to you. And then they send you on your way and they check a box and say, interviewed that black dude. And let's go ahead and hire that white man we wanted. So that's my problem with it, is that I'm saying interview real candidates, right? And even though I don't buy the argument that you make about maybe Bieniemy interviews poorly, right? You don't know how to interview unless you're being interviewed. You got to get some experience, right? So if you're not interviewing actual contenders for these jobs, how do they get the experience to be able to meet those kind of requirements that you're looking for in an interview to potentially get that job that you may have in the future?
But that's the bullshit though, because and I agree with Steve to the latter point of saying they're gonna hire who they want to hire, and it's their right to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't. The thing is, a guy like Bieniemy, I'm not gonna sit here and believe that he can't interview, because he's at one of the highest levels of coaching that you have to be. You don't just become an OC just because you're black. You have to become an OC because you're good. And Andy Reid, the difference is between Belichick and Andy Reid. Yeah, Belichick's coaching tree has not been successful. Andy Reid's tree has been somewhat successful. So it makes them more marketable. You got a guy like Harbaugh that went from fucking special teams coach to head coach. They skipped over Rex Ryan because they knew he wasn't head coaching quality, and that was Ozzie, who was one of the very few GMs that are black. You know what I mean? So it's just like, we know what the writing is on the wall, and we know what their right is to do what they want to do. But don't piss on me and tell me it's raining.
Mm-hmm.
Bieniemy is highly qualified. He's one of the best. He's at one of the highest levels of NFL. So my better question is, why when it is involved as a black man, do we then begin to throw in the other factors and the what ifs and the bullshit? Nah, man. If they just didn't want to hire a black guy, then that's just what it is. We're not gonna question this guy's interview ability and his quality and his caliber. That's bogus, or else he wouldn't have the job that he has now. No one is hiring coordinators just cause. These motherfuckers got to know what they're doing. They got to interview just like everybody else, and he's at one of the highest levels to do it. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I mean, I do agree with Steve at the end of the day, because it's a business and the motherfuckers can run it the way that they want to. Is it right? Does the Matt Rule shit look good? Nope, does not. The Joe Judge shit look good? No, it does not. But fuck it, it's their right, and I hope there's some shit because of it.
And to the point that EJ just made, and I agree with Steve on that same point as well, where these owners own the team. They're spending millions and billions of dollars on these franchises. They have a right to hire who they want to hire, right? But if the league has a rule, the league that you operate, that you run your business in, that say you should interview minority candidates, I mean, interview somebody seriously. Don't interview bullshit people. But also, to the point that EJ made, there aren't very many black executives at that GM level who's doing these interviews with these coaches and hiring and firing of coaches. You had Ozzy, and I don't think Ozzy's with Baltimore anymore, right?
No, he retired.
Yeah, so he's gone. The Dolphins, we have a black GM, and I'm not sure how many others there are out there, but I would venture to say it's probably no more than five, if that, and five may be on the high side. You know, that's part of the problem as well, is that the folks who are doing the hiring aren't very diverse, and so you don't get that mixture of ideas and thought. It's just, let's just recycle another old coach. How many head coaching jobs did Norv Turner have? You know what I'm saying? Like, come on, man. You know, the Adam Gase thing that I mentioned earlier. Mike Vrabel is a coach in this league. Mike Vrabel went from being a player to a position coach for like one season, maybe two, I think, and then he's a head coach. And Eric Bieniemy can't get a job. That, come on, dog.
Vrabel went to Houston and he made their defense look really well. I mean, he had J.J. Watt, but I mean,
He wasn't a coordinator though. He was just a position coach. So it's not
right.
like you can give him credit for turning around a defense. He may have turned around the players under him at whatever position. I think he was like a linebackers coach or something like that. And then so essentially this guy went from being player to position coach, and then you basically snatch him out of obscurity basically and make him a head coach of the Tennessee Titans. That shit is amazing to me, where you see most people go through that coordinator track. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Maybe you start off at whatever position, work your way up to coordinator, and then you get that head coach offer. This guy went from player, position coach for like one or two seasons to head coach. Even if you take a guy like Flores, for example, and I don't mean to keep talking about Dolphins head coach, but it's just that I've read a lot about the guy. This dude went from college player, scouting, special teams, position coach. But the time that all this happened that I just mentioned was from 2004 into 2019 when he got his head coaching job. You know what I'm saying? We're talking about a 15-year process. Vrabel did 2 years of experience at the position level, and they say, let's make this guy head coach.
Yeah,
That
but
shit is crazy to me.
that's your tree though. He came from the Patriots, right? And
which
that
is
could be
successful.
that could be where what they're looking at, right? The thing is, you don't know what these teams are looking at or looking for when they're bringing people in. And yeah, do I agree that the enemy should have a job? Absolutely, absolutely. Would the Carolina Panthers have been a great fit for him? 100%. He was a fucking running back coach. He goes in there. He uses fucking Christian McCaffrey. He goes in there. He turns Cam Newton into a better Cam Newton than what he was because he can just use him the way they are using Patrick Mahomes. Is he a great fucking fit for it? Absolutely. Why they didn't take him is, and EJ's hanging on to the fact that I said that it's possible that he interviewed wrong. I'm not saying he did. I'm saying that there's a million other reasons why a franchise can come out and say they didn't want this person. One of which being interview, one of which being their ideas, their plans, for the future. There's a lot of reasons, right? And to immediately throw all 6 million endless millions of fucking reasons that they can potentially come up with, to the side and be like, oh, they looked at him, saw that he was black, and just were like, let's move on. We're not doing that. You can do it, but it's ignorant. It's just like, I saw something online, right? And it's a two-way street of ignorance. I saw something online that said, hey, we need to spotlight. Can we, Tim? Can we take a minute to spotlight that the top six quarterbacks in the league right now are black quarterbacks? Right. That was in a sports group that I was in, and a response from somebody on that group was, um, "Why do we have to take time to spotlight that? Because no one's sitting back spotlighting and saying, hey, let's take a moment to recognize the top 6 quarterbacks that are white if it's all white people, right? And I think it's just a two-way street of ignorance. The ignorance for him to reply with that, for one. And do I think we should spotlight? It's a great thing to see that black quarterbacks are running the league right now because of what people have said in the past, because we've dealt with in the past. Absolutely. But I feel like that same thing he said that he replied with is very similar to what someone that's saying, yeah, so and so didn't get a job 100% because they're black. That's like a woman going into HR and saying, hey, I didn't get a job because I'm a woman, or someone going into HR and saying, "Hey, I didn't get a job. They didn't hire me because my hair is too long," or some dumb shit. You know what I'm saying? When there's hundreds and thousands of other reasons, we can speculate, right? We can speculate 100%, but to say without a shadow of a doubt that he doesn't have a job because he's black, I just think that's a bit harsh.
Steve, sometimes you have to look at the evidence that's available and make a judgment based upon that evidence, right? I'm not a psychiatrist. I've never met Donald Trump in person. I know this motherfucker has a psychological disorder. I just know it without having ever met him, without ever having talked to him, just from what I see, right? And you can look at other things. Most women on average make about 78% of what men make. Now, you could say maybe they don't interview well, or maybe they don't ask for raises enough, or whatever, but it seems like that's the case because they're women. You know what I'm saying? So, I think sometimes you have to just look at the evidence available and say it is what it is,
That's peanuts and jelly beans to me. That's um when you're talking about the what women make, I mean, it's longevity of positions and things of that take into place to take into play as well. I don't, again, you have to dial that into a specific career and all of that to be able to speak to it, because specifically, let's say in my line of work, where people are where I'm in a technical call center, for the most part, the majority of the people that work in my call center, of my agents, are males, right? They are much more technical. Most of them are much more technical than the women, right? So their metrics, they're doing much better on their metrics. They're able to get through their call. They're more efficient. They're more accurate. They're, all of that. We still have women working there, absolutely. But when it comes time for it, when it comes to the end of the year reviews, we're going to look at the efficiency. We're going to look at your resolution rate and all of that great stuff, right? And the individual who's more technical, which is just happens to be a male, is probably going to get a bigger raise, right? If that equates to fucking 78% of, or 78% more by those standards, you know that's why I say you have to drill it down. You can't just say, oh, 100%, women on average make less than males by such and such a percentage. Well, that it's just.
Well, you're looking at it from a micro standpoint. I'm saying when they run the numbers on a macro scale, looking at the larger picture, women make about 78% less, or not less, but 78% on the dollar compared to men. And so what I'm saying is that essentially you have to look at that and say, if that's been the case year after year after year, maybe it's because they're women. You know what I'm saying? And the same thing, we talk about these black coaches, not being hired or interviewed, etc. You know, we continually see teams with vacancies not hire minority coaches. You have a league that is predominantly black in the talent, and you have a lot of well, not a lot of, but you have a decent size in the coaching pool that are black coaches or people of color. And then when you get to the head jobs, it just falls off a cliff, and when you look at the grand scheme of things, especially when there are coaches out there where you don't hear to EJ's point with saying he's not buying it with the interview thing, you don't hear that kind of stuff about this guy being enemy, right? From the Adam Schefters and Chris Mortensens and Ed Waters and those type of guys who are in the know, you don't hear them reporting, oh man, such and such really liked this guy, but they said his interview was terrible. That's not something that you've heard being reported by the folks who report on these type of things. So when you weigh all of the evidence, it seems to be that being black is an issue with getting a head coaching job in the NFL.
Sure, and that, again, to me, it's okay to speculate, but to say, well, the Panthers didn't hire so and so because he's black, there's you can't, you can't do that. You don't have the proof to say that, right? You can say, oh well, based on what I've seen, sure, the numbers don't support it, but I'm sure there's a lot more behind, data analysts, people that analyze this type of stuff. They can probably dig into it, especially when you're talking about, the male to female ratios of pay, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot more to it. Does it sound like it? Does it look like it? If it looks and sounds like a duck, it's a duck. I get it. I understand that. It does look like that in the NFL. However, we have also seen a good number of black coaches. Tony Dungy. We've seen Lovey Smith. We've seen Mike Tomlin. Now we're seeing Flores. Um, are there many more white coaches than black coaches? Absolutely, but you're looking at a historic franchise in the NFL that goes back to the days of, where black people were not even fucking looked at as citizens for the most part, right? So, when you're looking at history, you're going to see that, and we're getting more progressive as a society. And I think getting more progressive as a society, you're going to start to see people age out, people like Jerry Jones who are going to age out, and Stephen Jones gets in there, and you could potentially see, there's a black quarterback for them. Who knows, right? Other franchises, they're going to age out. You're going to see younger people get in there, just like we talk about politics. you know um you know the hip hop culture, etc., is starting to have play a bigger part on our society, on the kids, on the teenagers, and when they get to a voting age, we're going to see a different demographic, and I think we're going to see that with sports as well, including the NFL. It's just the time has to come for it. I think we're still seeing days of owners that are in their 60s or better, and you look at the stakeholders, right? You're looking at the stakeholders. You're looking at the season ticket holders. How many Ravens or how many Dolphins games did you go to this year? How many Jets games did EJ go to this year? How many Cowboys games did I go to this year? Right? The people that are buying these tickets, the people that are the stakeholders as owners, they're probably looking at that demographic and thinking, you know, is it fucked up to say? Sure. But this person, when they come to the stadium, they're probably going to have more faith in someone that looks like me. Just like we say about black kids when they see mentors that are black, right? Is it wrong? 100%. But it's hard for us still to say. And I'm just saying, you could be 100% right, but we can't say that that's exactly, without a shadow of a doubt, what's happening, that people are just singling out black individuals and saying nope, not giving them the job.
You basically on your latter points confirmed that it's because they're black. But um to you brought up the coaches, you named like two or three guys that you probably can't get more than 10 black head coaches from when they started to now, like the Loveys and the Dungies. That's years ago. They haven't been head coaches or coached in a while, mainly because of their choice. I mean, Lovey's in college now, but you know what I mean? Herm is in college now, but I mean, this you're talking about 20 years. You probably only have about 10 on hand that you can count. But and I understand what you're saying. It is very hard to prove racism and all of these things if you don't outright have someone saying this is what it is. But the question then begins to be asked: if it's so hard and we can say that it's not largely based off of ethnicity, then why have the rule in the first place?
Well, I mean, well, part of the reason they have the rule is,
Because they know it's a fucking problem.
well,
And
no,
they
well,
Congress.
yeah, but not just that. Well, what happened was back in the it was either the late '90s or the early 2000s. Johnny Cochran, Johnny Cochran, OJ fame, glove don't fit, you must have quit. For the folks who are wondering who the hell I'm talking about, Johnny Cochran was preparing. A lot of people don't know that Johnny Cochran was a civil rights lawyer. He wasn't just some criminal defense attorney who worked the OJ case. He's actually a civil rights lawyer, and or was a civil rights lawyer. He's dead now, but Cochran was preparing to sue the NFL on behalf of black coaches who, because they weren't being interviewed for these jobs. And the NFL was like, whoa, hold the fuck up, because they definitely didn't need this kind of negative attention. And Rooney, the guy who was I think his name's Art Rooney, I want to say, the guy who was the owner of the Pittsburgh Steelers, came up with this Rooney rule where they would force teams to interview black candidates for head coaching
That's not
vacancies.
what I'm asking. I know the
Oh, okay.
backstory. What I'm saying is, if the NFL, and if it was so hard within a shadow of a doubt to hang on your banner and say this might not be the problem, the NFL really would have never had no reason to cave in fear of a lawsuit, because they know that if exposed, it would have exposed the truth. There
Yeah.
wouldn't be no need for a rule if in fact things were so above board. And I mean, we all know what it is. I mean, Steve's absolutely right. Unless you get an owner to come out on camera to say this is exactly why they didn't do it, or have one of those situations, then it's gonna be large speculation. It's gonna be feeling. It's gonna be things that, even if they have the data and the knowledge, we're probably not gonna be privy to it outright. So yeah, I get that part, but they have the rule because they know that if it really came to play and it really came to be shown and some real digging was really done, they would have gotten bit in the ass. So it is what it is.
And I definitely agree. I'm sorry I didn't understand your point the first time, but I
No, you
definitely,
got it. There's good backstory, good back content.
but with you saying that, what it also brings to the front of my mind is the Kaepernick situation, right? And I believe that that's the exact reason that the NFL settled that lawsuit with Kaepernick, because, like EJ said, you know, once some of this shit that was happening with Kaepernick, and when I say with Kaepernick, I mean the reasons for him not being able to be a quarterback in this league. If that shit would have saw the light, the NFL would have been exposed, and they'd have had to answer a lot of questions. And to avoid that from happening, they settled with Kaepernick. And it could be very much the same thing like EJ saying with the reason they put this Rooney Rule in place versus going through a lawsuit and getting their dirty laundry aired.
The problem with the Kaepernick thing is we don't really know the details of it. Them settling for that, I think, was more because they were just trying to get him to go away, just trying to get him to shut the fuck up because their ratings were down. Specifically, I don't think they were worried about it going to court or anything like that, because there again, how can you prove that anything within the league, anyone in the league office called 32 teams and said, or 30 teams, or however many teams, and said, hey, by the way, none of you guys can hire Kaepernick. If you hire Kaepernick, we're gonna fine you or whatever the fuck, right?
I'll tell you how, Steve. I'll tell you how. It'll be the same way as we've seen over these last few weeks when we watch stuff like the impeachment hearings. When you have people at that level who meet, a lot of these meetings aren't one on one. There's other people on the line. There's an assistant in the room who may not be on the line, but he at least heard this side of the conversation. There's an assistant on the other side who heard the other side of the conversation. There could be text messages, there could be emails, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of that stuff would have come out in the discovery courtroom process. And so to avoid those kind of things from coming out, and again, I'm not saying this with any certainty, like I know this is what was going to come out. But when you have a guy who is as good as Kaepernick is, right?
Was.
Or was it was as good as Kaepernick was, who was not able to play in this league, and Ryan Tannehill is still in this league, you know.
And Hill's better than Kaepernick.
Tannehill,
Tannehill today is better than Kaepernick was when they sat his ass down. That's
right?
what
But
people.
he wasn't back then when he wasn't allowed to play, you know. And so, but at the end of the day, I think that's partially why they settled, because if this thing had gone to court and Kaepernick's lawyers were able to begin sending out subpoenas for documents and for witnesses and et cetera, et cetera, I think that there probably would have been things exposed that showed that maybe not the NFL itself, but the owners in this league conspired against him to keep him from being able to get a job.
I think Kaepernick would have lost that. I feel like he would have lost it because if he was so dead set on it and there was a chance to win, why from his side would he settle? Right? You could say the exact same thing when you flip it the other way around, right? And when you go back to what we were talking about, how would it feel for us if we're sitting here and someone came out and they're like, "Yo, how come there aren't more white people starting in the NBA?" Right? What if if that came across the fucking internet, whoever said that would be fucking crucified, dog. 100%. For somebody to be like, and EJ, I know you just put your headset back on. So what I said is if somebody came out, let's say a big name individual came out and was like, hey, how come there aren't more white people starting in the NBA? How come there are more white people? How come there are zero white people starting on the All-Star game? In the NBA, right? You know, they would be fucking crucified if they came on and said, "Yo, the league is racist. They'll only let white people coach. They won't let them play." You know what I'm saying? Like that. It's the same thing. It's the exact same thing, and it's the same thing you say with Kaepernick. You say the NFL settled because they didn't want to lose anything, but I mean Kaepernick being an individual and being so pro for his cause, if he really, really knew he had something and his lawyers were telling him that they could have won that, I don't think he settles.
Well,
Nope.
um, 2 points. One is, I'm gonna use Steve to answer Steve. The reason you don't see anybody white starting in the All-Star game is because the black folks that you see starting in the All-Star game, they interview better, right? They play better. You see what I'm saying? And that's how they got those starting
They're
positions.
also voted in by the
Right.
fans.
So that's how the
Exactly.
So
coach so that's how the coaches got their job.
if they want if white people want to see more white people start, then more white people should vote them in. But the other thing with Kaepernick, I don't think that we can believe that he's so for the cause. Maybe he did have something, Steve, and he just wanted to settle for the bread. I'm not gonna think that he's that righteous that if he did have something on the NFL, he was going to blow it up. Let's also remember he still wanted to play football. So maybe he didn't want to damage the league to really expose them. Maybe he wanted his bread and he wanted to fucking play football.
And
Kaepernick
then
looked like shit. The last year when he started kneeling, he looked like shit. He was playing like shit, and that's what people seem to forget. When they're like, "Oh, how could so and so start in the league? Oh, and Kaepernick can't. How can so and so have a job and Kaepernick can't?" Also, remember, Kaepernick is a cocky motherfucker. You know what I mean? According to I think it was Harbaugh or I forget which coach it was. One of the coaches. Oh,
he said hardball.
no, no, no. It was John Elway. John Elway said that they reached out to Kaepernick's camp throughout all of that before they settled, and he didn't want to come in and try out because he didn't want to be a backup and he didn't want to be. So, I mean, if that's true, right? And again, we're speculating because we're speculating on both sides of the coin. If that's true, there's no way to prove that Kaepernick was being held out of a job because he was black, right? It could have been him just being cocky as fuck. Even after his workout, I know his camp said nobody reached out, but perhaps they didn't reach out because he fucking made it a publicity stunt for one, and for two, through this whole thing, Kaepernick has been completely silent, letting everyone do the talking for him, right? So, if it was such a big deal, come out and fucking voice yourself, make yourself heard. Don't wait until the league decides, hey, let's give this guy a shot to try and make a mockery of the fucking league. Now, because you decided to be a dick, yeah, let's spite this motherfucker, and we're not gonna give him a chance. Or why do I want that negative energy in my fucking on my team?
But we've been saying that consistently, and I've said that with you 1,001 times. I've said that 1,001 times. Hence my point why Kaepernick is not a good example to this Rooney Rule argument, because we don't really know Kaepernick's real intention. He utilized, as Jermaine was saying to me over here, and I've said before, he's utilized this platform, our plight, to virtually argue for himself and the betterment of himself. It no longer became about police brutality. It became all about him getting a job. And even at the end of the day, if they were such the evil empire, we're saying the same things, this motherfucker still says he wants to play for them. So he's not a good example as to the righteous getting really screwed over by the NFL. He's not. He's just not. You know what I mean? The reality is, with this Rooney Rule, they're bringing in motherfuckers that are not qualified to take these head coaching jobs, and they really have no reason. Now, granted, we're not in an interview. We don't know how well people have done, but just the way that things go, you don't see offensive coordinators getting passed over for guys like fucking Rule and the guy Judge in New York. You just don't see it happen. It just doesn't happen. And like I said, if there was no real need for the rule, there wouldn't be one. The NFL would say, fuck you, we ain't got to do this. We ain't got to make our 32 owners do it because you ain't got shit on us. So fuck you.
So tell me why none of these teams took Greg Roman then, who is the offensive coordinator for Baltimore, who made Lamar Jackson go from looking like he was playing fucking Pop Warner two-hand touch in the backyard to, you know, Michael Vick squared.
I don't know that Greg Roman has ever been a head coach, even from his
No,
days in San Francisco.
he
I
hasn't.
don't.
But how come nobody's been in contact with him?
I
He's
don't even think that he's wanted to interview for a head coaching position.
That was the exact point that I was going to make. How do we know that he's made himself available to take that next step? Because
aha
he could feel on his own that he's not ready.
aha.
But before you go there, coming to America, you know, before you go there, a guy like Benemy is saying, "I am ready for that next step. Interview me, put me in, coach." Right?
Well, maybe you're not. Just because you think you are doesn't mean you are. Like
But
we're assuming he is, but
so
where's
the thing that I assume, that teams are looking at is, what have you done, right? And Benjamin has shown that he's done a lot, right? Now, to be at that position, like EJ said, you don't become an offensive coordinator in the NFL without skill. So that means that this dude has to have some kind of leadership skill. He has to have, the play calling skill and the situational awareness to call the right plays and on and on and on, right? So it's whether or not you think he's ready to get the top spot and run it all versus just the offense, right? But at the same time, you have a guy who has shown the last couple of years that he's able to do it, and he's able to do it at a very high and consistent level. And he's passed over for a job for a guy like EJ's reading the resume in Matt Rule, who doesn't seem to be doing it that great. But he's
from
hired. He's passed over for a guy like Joe Judge, who hasn't done it at all,
where
right?
did Judge come from?
From the
A
Patriots.
shitty ass franchise.
Aha.
Most recently,
Nope.
he was a Giants wide receivers coach. Most recently,
Hold on,
shit.
EJ. Hold on, EJ. Let me answer Steve with Steve. how do we know? Why aren't they assuming that it's Josh McDaniels who's making these guys look great instead of Joe Judge?
Sure. And
And really,
how do we know
they
that?
haven't done shit other than
How
the
do
one guy, Edelman.
how do we know that they didn't offer to be enemy and he turned it down? I mean, there's that's what I'm telling you guys.
We,
There's so much more
the reason we don't
because
know
they
that,
didn't report it.
we would have heard it. Come on, Steve.
Okay,
Watch enough sports.
okay.
A lot of these guys, with the way these reporters are in sports and the way people talk, it's almost like we're in the room when this shit is happening. You know what I'm saying? If he turned down a job, we would have heard about it.
No, he may not. It may not have been formally offered to him. They could have been in the interview and been like, "Hey, what do you think of 4 years, 28 million?" And he
Well,
was like,
they couldn't offer him a job because he's a current coach. You can't offer a job until the coach's season is over. You can request the interview, but you can't hire him. That's what, like with Flores,
"There you
we
go."
were
So
going to hire
then,
Flores, but we had to wait until the Patriots finished the Super Bowl.
there you go. So then, to EJ's point, what he said about the Cowboys, who may what if these teams think that Kansas City is built for the Super Bowl and they don't want to wait till March to get going to get started? I'm telling you, there's so many outs here that you can say again, you can speculate, but there is a lot of ways to fucking retort and you just can't say. I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, being a black person, knowing that we've been through, it's easy for us to sit down and just fucking keep playing that card. But at some point, we have to fucking look at all of the mirrors, look at all of the smoke, and get past it, get past that card. And until again, could it be possible? Sure, but there's also it's not blatant, right? The blatancy that we see are that black people are getting gunned down by fucking white people, by white cops. That is blatant. That is blatant racism. We're seeing that. But the stuff that we're assuming that we're talking about here with the coaching, it's all speculation.
Well, Steve, I get what you're saying with it being blatant, right? So yeah, I'm pretty sure. Well, I mean, I say I'm pretty sure. I would hope that the owners aren't getting together and saying, "Man, we're not hiring these niggers," you know. However, there is a thing that's called institutional racism, right? And you see a league, like I mentioned earlier, that's 75, 80% black. All of the employee base, the people who put the asses in the seat are almost all black.
What are the asses in the seat though?
Huh?
What are the asses in the seat though?
They're mostly white folks.
Yeah, you admit to your own point of saying that the owners may be thinking their fans are more comfortable with white folks running the show is the epitome of what we're saying. It's exactly what we're saying. White guys are going to make it more comfortable for white fans to spend their money and come in and support their franchise. That's what it is.
Then why wouldn't I get a white coach? Why wouldn't or I'm sorry,
That's what
why
I'm
wouldn't
saying.
why
I'm
I'm
agreeing
sorry,
with you
why wouldn't they get a white quarterback then?
because they're not always good and they don't always win. So you just got
See,
to do what you got to do. But
but
we only got 6 games.
you can't have what ifs when it comes to quarterbacks, but
I'm
not
at,
coaches.
but I'm actually using what you said. You said that they want a guy running the show. It's totally
No.
different when you
What I
guy
said
run.
is I was being open
You said
minded. I was
you
playing
said
both
you want a
sides of the
guy.
field.
You said you want a guy coaching that's going to make them feel more comfortable.
No,
When
no,
it
no,
comes
no.
to actually, that's what you said earlier.
I didn't say that's what I want.
That's
What
not
I
No, I said you're saying that the franchises are thinking, let me have a guy that's coaching that makes the white fans feel like them because they see them. Now, as the talent, that doesn't always you can have a black quarterback and they'll just attribute it to Greg Roman. They'll attribute it to Harbaugh. It doesn't mean anything. Doesn't you at today's day and age, yeah, you said they're getting more progressive. We don't need necessarily a white quarterback to make them feel comfortable. Long as the coach is white, that's all they need.
again, what I talked about are possibilities of both sides of the fence. You guys are one sided. You guys are extremely one sided, and it's black is whack. That's what you guys are fucking
But
like. You guys are
we're using your arguments in the same breath. I'm literally saying what you said. The reason that they have
you're
white
saying what I
coaches,
said, but I again I told you it's what I said when I said that to you is I said sure it's possible that that is what's taking place. I'm not saying that's what is taking place. You guys are dead set on 100% that's what's taking place. Just like I'm telling you, it's possible that he interviewed shitty, and you guys are like, "Fuck no, there's no possible way. He's a black professional in America. He has to fucking interview great." I mean, there's no fucking way that he turned it down. They can't. There's no way that they could have colluded and told him, "Hey, we're gonna give you four years or give you a 2-year contract because he's still playing." Come on, man. We know that shit is crooked out there. And it, again, when I'm talking about it, I'm talking about both sides of it, and I try to see the light from both sides of it. You know, there's two entries to the tunnel. For you guys, there's one entry to the tunnel, and on the other side is a fucking wall.
I mean, I hear you. I hear you, Steve. I just gotta. For me, I'm looking at the totality of things, and I'm like, based on all the evidence that I'm seeing, it seems like, or not, it seems like, if you're a black coach, you're not gonna be a head coach. Being an offensive coordinator is as high as you're gonna go, unless you go coach in college, right? And like EJ made the point earlier when you brought up guys like Tony Dungy. Tony Dungy coached what 10 years ago? Or I don't know if it's been a full 10 years since he left Indianapolis. But in between the time of Tony Dungy becoming a coach to now, it's probably been about 10 to 12 black coaches total. You
in
know,
almost 15, almost 20 years. It's been like you count them on both your hands.
Mm-hmm. And I remember we were talking about the number of black coaches. I believe it was last season when we had, I want to say it was about 6 to 8 of them or something like that. And now there's what, 3? You know what I'm saying? So, well, I guess 4. Forgetting about Rich Rodriguez and Washington. Or that's not his name. What the fuck is his name?
Ron Rivera.
Ron Rivera.
Isn't there somebody named Rich Rodriguez?
You guys
A
fucking racist.
film director, yeah.
But yeah, you know what I mean? But there aren't that many, coaches of color, And I was when Washington hired Ron Rivera, I was shocked. I'm like, damn, because a lot of coaches of color don't get that second chance. You've had Tony Dungy from the Bucks to Indianapolis, Ron Rivera from Carolina to Washington.
But Ron Rivera also has he's not an Afro Latino. He's a Hispanic guy who could be. I'm throwing this out there. He could be one of those Hispanic guys, very conservative. I don't know, but I mean, I'm just throwing it out there. I'm playing devil's advocate like Steve does.
Lovie Smith went from the Bears to Tampa. Don't forget that.
And then what?
Oh yeah, forgot Lovey.
Yeah, after he took him how far and then got axed.
But then he lost in Tampa. He didn't do shit in Tampa.
And how many guys don't do shit anywhere and still get jobs?
North Turner,
Adam Gase. The list goes on and on and on. I mean, I hear you, Steve.
At least McCarthy won a Super Bowl.
Right. That was my point.
Gase is the quarterback whisperer.
Adam Gase is a fucking idiot.
Hey, one could say that Ryan Tannehill learned under Adam Gase and went to Tennessee and brought him to the playoffs.
But you know what else? This is also the shit that amazes me with coaches like that, right? With a guy like Adam Gase. This guy coaches fucking Peyton Manning, and they call him the quarterback whisperer. Like what? You know what I'm saying? Like, how the fuck does that work, duh?
Well, because Peyton Manning's first year, he went 1-15.
But he wasn't with him his first year.
Right.
He wasn't with him soon after that, right? I don't think he got with him until later. Yeah.
He was in Denver.
No, he wasn't with him in Denver.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was.
In Denver.
Well, he was ass in Denver.
But that's the thing though, right?
Manning was garbage in Denver.
But I'm saying you coach Peyton Manning and they say, "Oh, this guy coached Manning." It's not like Manning was some fucking nobody before you got him, and you spun shit into gold. He already was Manning, but they make it seem like this dude made Manning. You know what I mean? And that's how he gets this fucking quarterback whisperer rap. Same shit with the guy that we hired from Green Bay, Joe Philbin. Oh, this guy was the coordinator for Aaron Rodgers. You know, Rodgers is Rodgers. And then this dude comes to Miami and he's ass. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't understand how
Yeah,
that shit
Gates
works.
history is trash. Pure trash. He had him in Denver.
So I don't think he didn't get called the quarterback whisperer for Manning. He got called the quarterback whisperer for
For Cutler?
for Cutler with the Bears.
Get
That's
the
where that
fuck
came
out
from.
of here. For Cutler?
Hey, that's where
No,
it came from.
it was Broncos first, then Cutler, and then because other than that, he didn't have any offense coordinating experience. It was Denver, then it was fucking Chicago.
And Cutler wasn't that good. So what the fuck was he whispering?
Yeah,
Cutler was
that
good.
was the only time. That was the only time that he had Manning. That season. What was it? 2013 to 2014. Then he went to Cutler. That was it.
Yeah, but Manning was trash. So there's no way he got it from that. But also he went to Miami, and the first year he brought you guys to 10-6. But he's not a good coach because the year after Tannehill got hurt.
No, he's not.
We saw enough, which is why he's no longer the coach.
Mm.
But anyway, with that being said, I'm kind of looking at this clock, and I think we need to go ahead and get these football picks in real quick.
Yeah, let's talk about this weekend. You got the games up? I haven't pulled them up. I'll pull them up. Let me pull it up. Tom Brady is out. Drew Brees is out. If Russell Wilson gets out, then we know for sure that there's going to be a quarterback that never got it.
Nah, you got Aaron still in there.
Yeah, fuck him. I hope
I
it's
agree.
never mind. I hate Aaron Rodgers, bro. I can't stand that motherfucker. Cocky bastard. All right, Saturday we got two games. Minnesota is going into San Francisco. Tennessee's going into Baltimore. Houston's going that's Saturday. Then you got Houston and Kansas City on Sunday, Seattle and Green Bay. Before we actually do the individual games, who do you have in this? Who do you have in the Super Bowl, EJ? Two teams.
Ravens, Niners.
What about you, Vari? Way to go out on a fucking ledge there, EJ. Taking the two number one picks.
I have to actually agree with EJ.
Oh my god,
If Ravens,
you
Kansas
guys,
City,
you guys
Because
love
you gonna
making
pick
our.
the same team. Shut the fuck up.
if if Baltimore KC would be in KC, which it won't be because Baltimore got the better record, they got the number one seed, I would give KC the edge. But I think it's going to be a phenomenal game. But I think Baltimore pulls it out, and then I got KC, or not, I'm sorry, KC. I got 49ers going only if Green Bay can knock off Seattle.
All right, I got
The same game.
I think Baltimore's getting there, but I think Minnesota's gonna get there.
Ooh, bold pick, but you really don't mean that shit. Get the fuck out of here. This is the same guy
So
that said Cousins ain't gonna do shit. I hate Cousins. Woo, 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 woo. You don't believe you hate Aaron Rodgers, but you don't believe that Kirk Cousins is gonna get that far. You don't believe it.
the
I
thing
don't
about
fuck.
Kirk Cousins, two things about Kirk Cousins. Thing number one, when he's shit, he's fucking diarrhea. But the other part is when he's hot, that motherfucker is hot, bro. And so I'm not thinking Kirk Cousins is gonna do the deed. I'm thinking Dalvin Cook is gonna do the deed for those guys. That motherfucker is a beast. And we'll get into it when we talk about the games. But so for Saturday, Minnesota, San Fran, Tennessee, Baltimore. Obviously, you guys both think San Fran and Baltimore are going to win. You don't have to
Right.
give me your reasoning behind that.
Right.
I'll give you my reason for the underdog in the Minnesota game. I don't see Tennessee doing shit with Baltimore. But the Minnesota San Fran game, I definitely can see. The only thing that helps San Fran is they're getting what's the dude's name back? Oh fuck. On
Alexander.
defense. Huh?
Alexander,
I don't
the
think that's what
linebacker. Alexander.
maybe that's who it is. Um they're getting him back. But San Francisco's offense really is not that good. Their defense is very good. But Minnesota, if their defense is playing well, they have a great pass rush. They have Harrison Smith at safety, who I think Harrison Smith can cover George Kittle. Can he stop him? No, but I think he can cover him decently, and that's where San Fran's passing game comes at you. They don't really have a running game. I think if Xavier Rhodes can stop from getting torched by Emmanuel Sanders, I think Minnesota can pull that game out. I feel comfortable choosing
But
Minnesota.
you're betting on Cousins, who you shit on forever and ever.
No, I'm betting on Dalvin Cook keeping the ball on Minnesota's hands and then Minnesota's defense. Kirk Cousins is just a game manager. He's going to game manage that game, but the rest of the NFC is trash. I think Seattle is going to go into Green Bay, and I think Seattle is going to beat Green Bay. I think Seattle beats Green Bay. I think it's going to be a low scoring game, and I think they're going to lose because they choose to try and run the ball and control the clock rather than throw the ball with Aaron Rodgers, which is, at some point you have to allow a fucking a lion to be a lion. Like Aaron Rodgers throwing the ball, he's one of the best quarterbacks that we've ever seen in our day. And all year it's been Aaron Jones, Jamal Williams, Aaron Jones, Jamal Williams. Um, you have to allow him to do his job, and I think they will lose. I think personally they'll lose to Seattle because I think Russell Wilson's bad playoff game was last week against Philly because they should have blown Philly out. Now I think they come in, they go into Green Bay. They're used to the cold weather, just like in Seattle, so there's no shock there. And I think that Russell Wilson can play a very good game, and I think Beast Mode is going to have a good game as well. So I think Seattle beats Green Bay. That's my pick there on Sunday. And then we got the Houston KC game. Who you guys got in Houston KC and then Seattle Green Bay?
Yeah, I definitely don't think Houston is gonna pull it out. I mean, shit, the way last week kind of went, they don't even seem like they should even be here at this point.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
So I don't see them beating KC. I think they go ahead and wrap it up and start planning for the next season. Um that Green Bay Seattle game is very interesting because one, I mean, we know a lot of these games come down to quarterback play, especially in the playoffs. And you got two veteran quarterbacks, two Super Bowl winners, two guys who know how to win. And so I think that it can be a very exciting game. The weather is not going to play a factor. Maybe I don't even think you can say, you know, that the crowd is necessarily going to be a factor because, you know, Seattle's used. I think they play in Green Bay, and Seattle, they have that raunchy crowd. Obviously they're not booing Seattle, but like they've been in that environment. I guess is the point that I'm trying to make.
Noise.
Yeah, with the noise and stuff, and I actually think that Seattle beats Green Bay, and that San Fran game, Steve. I actually think that San Fran's biggest issue may actually be their head coach. Does he get in his own head from him trying to prove that he was some fucking coaching genius in the Super Bowl with Atlanta when he allowed them to come back by not running the fucking ball? Does he second guess himself? Does he overcompensate with the play calling, etc.? I'm actually wondering about this guy because this is going to be the first time that we've seen him in a game of serious consequence since that Super Bowl. and so I'm wondering how uh, um, he goes in with his play calling and such.
Yep.
I don't have too much deeply on it. Um, I just want Seattle to win. Um, I just want Seattle to win.
Russ just a good dude, man. I just like the guy.
I dislike Aaron Rodgers and the Packers.
Nobody likes the
49ers
Aaron.
I hate
49ers defense, I think, is gonna give Cousins fits because I think they're really, really good. I
And
don't think
Cousins is not that good.
exactly, and I don't think Garoppolo is as bad as people say. I think he can do enough to get the win, but Houston and Kansas City, Houston shouldn't even be there. Uh, Kansas City's gonna win that, and I think the biggest test for the Ravens is gonna be going against this Tennessee defense, which is very stout, but they lack pressure up the middle. So Gus Edwards, Ingram, and Lamar Jackson should have a field day. They have a monster offensive line from guard to center to guard, and then going to Kansas City, I think Kansas City coming into Baltimore, the weather being a factor, the crowd being a factor, and then I don't know too. I don't know if Mahomes stays healthy. Just his style of play and the level of playoffs and holding the ball and things like that. I don't know that it bodes well. I just think, and then again, Andy Reid and the meltdowns. Andy Reid, he either goes to the Super Bowl or he doesn't. I just feel like some of that is going to come into play. When the Ravens played them last time, they were banged up. Um, so I don't know. I honestly, there is a part of me that would hate on the Ravens and their fans if they do go all the way, because I don't want to hear this shit anymore. I really don't. Um, it's good for the city when they win and they do good, but really, I'm a fucking hater inside. But I gotta say, I think they're gonna make it. And I think the Niners are gonna make it. I just think that defense is pretty damn good. I think they're pretty hungry. So we'll see. I don't really have too much analytically on it. I just think they're gonna win, and it's been
Yeah.
3 hours.
And the problem too for like a Tennessee, for example, is that if the Ravens have a pretty good defense, and if they can, I don't know, well, I don't want to necessarily say stop Derrick Henry because the dude is just a fucking beast, but if they can allow him to not go off, then
Tannehill's
Tennessee
gonna
has to
blow it.
rely on Tannehill,
Tannehill's gonna
and
blow it.
Tannehill has the same problem as Kirk Cousins has. He's not that good, you
Yep.
know. And even you look at last week, and people are giving him credit. Oh, he beat the Patriots, da 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 da. Tannehill threw for 72 yards in that game.
Right.
72 yards in a playoff game.
Yep.
He's not that good,
No,
So
he's not, and it's gonna be nasty Saturday night. In Foxborough, let's be honest, Patriots fans aren't real. Before these 6 Super Bowls, you didn't
yep,
fucking exist.
yep.
You really don't have a home field advantage. They've been beaten in the playoffs a numerous amount of times. I don't remember how many, but going into Foxborough in the first round hasn't really boded well for them. But
Hmm.
coming into M&T Bank Stadium to play against these rowdy hooligans, Tannehill and them they end up for a whole different battle. Whole
Yeah,
different battle.
Yeah. I mean that Baltimore Tennessee game. I don't think there's any question there, and I don't think it's because Tannehill sucks. I think it's because Baltimore is very, very, very good. Um. So yeah, I mean, Kansas City. I got Kansas City. I mean, there's nothing more to say about that. Houston's ass. Although, although, if Kansas City secondary falls off a little bit, you know, and Deshaun Watson can extend the plays, they can make it a game. But I don't think they win. Actually, I know they're not going to win.
Hmm.
100%. Um. So yeah. Besides that, I think since you guys are getting tired, um,
It's been 3 hours. Don't even know what that audio is gonna look like.
it's VP. It's VP's fault.
Yeah, I
He's
blame you
gonna
both. Actually, this time I can't. I actually was more
you
quiet for
both.
once. Yeah.
All right. Well, um,
Nasty.
we'll leave. Yeah, we'll leave it to VP to get us up out of here, and we'll live to pot another day.
Amen.
All right. All right, folks. It was glad to be back joining you again, and definitely, as always, we appreciate you making a choice to listen to us here on the Castworthy podcast. Don't forget to follow us on any of our social media at Castworthy, on Instagram at Castworthy underscore podcast. Um, and you know, based on the things that we've talked about today, pay attention. It's easy to lose focus, but keep paying attention. Make sure you keep yourself informed on what's happening. Enjoy the time with the fam, and um, as always, we appreciate you rocking with us, and we'll talk to you next time.